You gonna have me just completely
You
run it? Are
live.
you?
I was going
All
to
right, all
introduce
right.
you. I was going to
And yes,
introduce
I was gonna let you do it. I was gonna let you do the introduction.
Shalom, shalom. Source gang in the building. Seven gang is in the building. Tonight we got a special episode from my brother Lion Farm, and he's going to be presenting the story of Israel is in the blood. So I
That's
hope
right.
y'all guys got your pen and your paper because the brother's finna drop some heavy science and go in, and hopefully y'all learn something, man. Let's get it. With no further ado, I'm gonna let Lion Farm. The floor is yours. This is your show, brother.
All right, shalom, shalom, family, shalom, shalom. I'm glad to meet you. As I've been here before, and I talked about a few things, but now's the day we're going to really break down some real truths. So I'm gonna show my screen. All right. And what I'm gonna use, just let me know if this is too small, as I'm gonna be using this Discord to show it because I usually like to show things on my phone. And I actually made this. This is gonna be a source. The source is gonna be in a Evernote. I'm gonna give the Evernote to our brother Genesis 49ers, and we're going to look at the information that's actually displayed on these things. So let me first make sure my screen share is on. Just making sure it's all connected. All right. Okay. Make that full screen. And tell me how this looks on your side. Can you see this right here?
It can be seen. Yeah, that's way better.
Okay. It's better? Okay, okay. So this is what I'm going to go over. And I'm going to go over this information as thorough as possible. So I'm going to start at the top. First, it is important to know, right? It's important to know a little something about DNA tests, right? Though they tell you possible location of origin of people, that's never to be taken as authoritative. It's important whenever you see a DNA test says they're from here, it's important to understand that's never authoritative. And we have different people that would tell you that that's not authoritative. For example, let me actually show you this at 4045.
Today's another day of fact.
Okay.
In the continental part of Europe, and some of them stayed.
Now, can you hear this? I'm gonna make sure you can hear this.
And that is probably where this quick surname for the Dutch came from, is actually from English. But if we go back further, of course, we find different surnames. We have the Norman invasion into England we have earlier with the Angles and the Saxons invasion, the Viking invasion. So that's just what we know on a broad scale, just in Europe. We have these groups moving all over. So is it unusual to find, let's say, Scandinavian DNA in France? Well, no, because we know that the Vikings, invaded France. We certainly find it in England and Ireland.
I'm gonna jump a little ahead to 45.
But it's not unusual to find. So pinpointing specific locations, I don't put much weight in that. Basically because we really don't know what the DNA profile of the people that lived there 500 years ago was. We don't know what it was 1,000 years ago. We can assume that it's very similar to the ones that live there now that have had their great-grandparents. But if you imagine, hey, if your great-grandparents were all born there, but their parents were immigrants from somewhere else, well, now you've got a different DNA that has been put into that group. And so now you're classifying something as English DNA, when really it should be classified as Dutch DNA or Polish DNA or Scandinavian DNA. So there's a lot of complications in that. And that's why I think that this is a fiction. I don't think that this is a fact. I don't put a lot of weight in companies that are saying they can pinpoint a specific location of where your DNA is from, because I don't think that we have the amount of data or even the type of data that we need to make that conclusion. If you want to learn more.
So obviously the type of data you need is actually historical documents that actually record things of the past, that actually records the movement of peoples. whenever we use DNA, we must understand that it actually puts people into haplogroups, types of groups of who our people are more similar to. Now, there's an idea of where they can come from. Now, if they find ancient fossils or ancient bodies, and they're in a certain area, we can actually take that data as in they're in that area. But we can't take modern people today and say they always been in such and such an area. The reason why that's important because a lot of people, when they see people and say African American, quote unquote, they don't want to actually dig into the actual evidence. And do you know that actual geneticists, after looking at a lot of DNA, they actually are taking it into consideration? I want to show you a Dr. Nathan Nathaniel. Sure. I'm going to show you something right here.
I just haven't
I just want to show you this at
the. It may be that JFES line is still out there, and because we've only.
I'm going to show you something here at 4149.
Well, if Noah is where I think he is, where they undergo massive population growth, is right when the central Mayan lowland civilization collapses. There are some who hang on in the Yucatan.
39 and 20 on here. So 39 and 20.
Y chromosome and 10 lost tribes of Israel. What would you say in regard to that question? If I'm understanding this correctly, it's sort of a question of the Samaritans. The northern tribes get conquered, judged by God. Judah hangs on for a while longer. And it's really a question of the larger Jewish diaspora. Can we identify the lineage of Abraham? Because they call Abraham their father. And the short answer is, we don't have enough data yet to know for sure. But the exciting thing is, we should know as we get more and more Y chromosome sequences from peoples around the globe. So it's a question I hope we'll have an answer to in the near future. Sounds like we need to start our own company to do more Y chromosome research and mapping around the globe.
So you see, he's actually right here. This is just one where he's admitting that they don't have the actual means to say what is Abraham's Y chromosome. So it leaves space to find it. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to find it. And I'm going to show you that we know what it is. Let me go to 218 here. You can see him also talk about it here. Go up a little bit.
Can you discuss?
Actually, I want you to hear this. I want you to hear this question that's going to be said here.
A particular person, and maybe I'll ask this one. Give some others an opportunity. Are the Israelites from haplogroup E? Can you discuss this? I know you mentioned the Israelites and haplogroup E at some stage, but you want to talk further on that. In episode 19, I think that's the correct number, we dealt with the history of Africa and saw that there's this group E lineage that's split several times, and one of the most intriguing splits is between E1B1B, that's an ugly name, yes, and E1B1A. And the latter are much of sub-Saharan Africa. The former, E1B1B, are North Africa. And I went through the reasons why this appears to be the result of the Muslim Arab conquest around the time of Muhammad and the centuries following. What's intriguing is, so you have sub-Saharan Africa and perhaps the Arabian Muslims connected around maybe 500 BC, perhaps through Egypt or Nubia. So, who were these people? The Israelites would have left Egypt 1,000 years prior, but given the connections between Arabian Peninsula and Israel in terms of geography, could there be any link there? I don't know yet. I'm still anxious to find out, can we find a genetic lineage that traces back to David, to Abraham, these sorts of things? And again, because we're dealing with ancient history, for reasons I went into in episodes 21, 22, 23, we're having to await more samples to say anything definitive.
Okay. So, in other words, you're going to come out with more in your book next year, because I'm sure you'll do some more research before them as well, but all this will be in a book for 2021.
So now it's 2021, but what we're going to do, as you've seen, he actually admits there that they don't have enough information to say what is the right Y chromosome, because he actually admits, without a doubt, that the chromosome of the people, like, for example, I actually have to make sure I show this before we proceed further. For anyone that comes in and, we've seen where there's some chromosomes called the chromosome of the Kohanim. You probably heard that before. It's a famous chromosome, right? It's going to be your J lineage. You may have seen that before where they talk about that J lineage of the Kohanim. Now, I want to show you one quick video that he quickly discredits that. I just want to show that because I think it's important just to have that for reference sake. So he does touch on that. For those that's familiar with that so-called Kohanim J chromosome, he actually confirms that that chromosome is actually going to be of a certain stock. And I'm just going to get that out the way real fast, and then we'll move forward from there. So let's actually take a look at this real fast. Not this one. We're going to go to this one, 2718. I just want you to see this real fast.
And then Lions Farm is Kohenum.
Kohenum. Yeah, that's okay. That's a better pronunciation then. All right, so I'm gonna show you this.
As you march downward to the modern era through the tree. In 1800 BC, the major European lineage, I should say the major, what I've called the indigenous European lineage, group I, and the major Turkish lineage, group J, are one. They have not separated. If you look at the family tree, what would become what I'm calling indigenous Europe, and what would become the Turkish people that would be up here in Central Asia, then come marching back through the Middle East in the late era, in the AD time period. On the Y chromosome family tree, they are joined. So who were they? Some of the other major lineages that would play such big roles later in history. Q, which would come to dominate the Americas. R1b, which would eventually become the dominant lineage in Western Europe. R1a, which I'm saying has strong evidence for being a Mongol lineage. All of those are a single lineage at this point in history. They all eventually appear to become Central Asian. But what were they originally? In East Asia, O, which would become 90.
So I'm gonna skip these. Ones. All these are gonna be Japhetic. It's also important to note these ones at the bottom. These are the two this is what we're gonna look at. We're gonna look at D and E. That's what we're gonna be looking at. Now these right here are all different. These are all gonna be Japhetic, and then these ones are gonna be Hamitic, and then you're gonna see some that's Shemitic.
Lineages S, K, and M, Papua New Guinea, Australia, so forth. They're all one at this point in history. In Africa, there is a division in lineages.
Note what he said there is going to be a division. A and B is not the same as D and E.
But some of the major ones are still joined. A and B are separate from D and E, but A and B have not yet separated. D and E are one lineage. Of course, D is not going to remain in Africa, except at perhaps a very low frequency. It's going to become the peoples of the great Andamanese Islands, the very dark-skinned people out here, and Japanese, a third of Japan. Right now, it's joined to E, and E, of course, is going to become, part of E, is a branch of E, is going to become the major lineage in sub-Saharan Africa. C has also differentiated.
So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna close this. Now we're gonna get right to it. I'm gonna close this one too. So let's get right to this, right? But first, before we look at this, I want to give a summary, because what we're gonna be doing is we're gonna be climbing a genetic ladder, and what you're gonna see is that it's very clear. Remember, God is the author of DNA, and he is not the God of confusion. So you'll see that this is gonna be very, very simple, more simple than you can ever imagine. But first, let me show you
Within
this.
the human genome, SNPs occur on an average of 1 in 1,000 base pairs. Researchers have shown that groups of SNPs occur in predictable patterns within sections of DNA. These inherited sections of 6 to 8 SNPs are called a haplotype. Within any one section of DNA, it is believed that there are only 3 to 5 different haplotypes throughout the entire population.
Okay. So I wanted to show you that just to get you a little understanding what we're going to be looking at. We're going to be looking at what is called a haplocode group. Now, a haplocode group is a grouping of people that are very similar. The possibility of one having the same haplocode group is very, very slim. It's not something that you see very common. I'm going to show you right here. In fact, the possibilities are extremely low, especially for someone to be in a certain haplocode group. It can be high as 1 to trillions, for the sake of understanding. You have a more higher chance of winning the lottery 15 times than for you to have the same haplotype group by mistake. So just understand that's how complex the DNA is. But yet it's going to give you clear understanding of this. Right. Now, I'm going to skip this part because I just talked about how it's important to know that DNA doesn't give you geographic information, but it gives you haplotype groups. So first, let's get to the meat of the study. I'm going to give you first the answer, and then I'm going to prove it. This is what I'm going to show you first, and then I'm going to prove it. This is going to be the line of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. E1, now, whatever you were used to, try to put that aside, because I know some of the Facebook ideas that they try to make Abraham E1, E1 right there. But what I want to show you today is that Abraham is actually E1B1, P2 right there. And he actually brings forth Ishmael. Now, some people, now I know the Facebook ideas where they say Ishmael is E1B and all that stuff, E1B1B. But put that aside and understand that from Abraham came E1B1B, which is actually seen in the Arab Muslim. It's very important with that. I also I did a video on Lion Farm on E1B1B. If you go to my page, you'll see a big screen that just says E1B1B, and that's where I go over E1B1B, which is actually of the Arabians. Now, look at from the next line after Abraham, E1B1A, V right there, 38, V38. That's going to be your next one. That's going to actually be Isaac. That's actually going to be Isaac right there. Now, what's interesting with Isaac, remember, he actually is going to bring forth a son, and his son is going to have a twin, right? And that's going to be that Isaac that has 12 tribes and one that doesn't, and one that's just a different line. Yes. After Isaac, there is a line called M2. M2 actually bring forth 12 sons, and they actually note this. There are 12 haplotype group main branches that are going to descend after this. And there's an outside branch that is called, this branch is actually going to be called E1B1C. We're going to look at that, and that's a different branch when we get there. So I just want to show you that, and I'm going to actually prove to you that this is actually the truth. So I'm going to show you what these things are. And that's going to be right at the top and color coordinated, as you can see right there at the top. And this note will be in the description is either in description now or it'll be in the description afterwards, as our brother put it in there. Now, right here, you can see right here, the best way to understand Israel is do the males line. Now, we know about the females line. We can do an understanding of it. We don't need to do that because we want to find Israel, the males, right? I just want to show you that we can know a little bit about the females line. They do have grouping for them. It's very similar. All the L lines are going to be Israel. If you see any L lines, usually that's going to be in the line of Israel. They're going to be actually a group of their own. As you can see here, they're their own group. So you're going to see L. Also, there's a ancient line in that, but I'm not going to talk about that right now. What we're going to do, we will be looking at the male line mainly, E and D. We're going to be looking at E and D in A00, which is only found in those who have E1B1A. So we're going to be looking at that, which is also nicknamed Y chromosome Adam. Also, we will be looking at the split of Noah, and we're going to be looking at that, and it's going to be very interesting. So I'm going to skip this part. This part right here. This is just something that is interesting. It's just some extra interesting information, historical information to say some things. But I want to just skip this part because it's going to be talked about by the Natufian. We don't need this part right now. It just talks about how we have a lot of actual historic evidence that lets us know that the E haplotype group was found outside of Israel. So I just wanted to talk about that real fast on some things, but I'm going to skip some of this thing because we don't need this right now, because we'll talk about it in a little bit. We'll actually get to this thing in a little bit, but I want you to understand this. Again, A and B, I'm going to skip this part because we already addressed, and for those, if anyone doesn't understand, Africans, there's different types of Africans, and the word African actually is from those who are actually Shemitic. For the sake of understanding, there's actually history that lets you know that the word Africa was given to Africa by those who actually lived in Arabia when they actually moved to Libya and named it Africa. That's important to understand that a lot of people in Africa, when you say African, it's not just one group. It's actually multiple groups that are in that area. I'm going to go to this 32 and 20. I just want to go to this so you can visually see what I'm saying here. 32
point towards a Turkish origin
and 20.
for much of the modern people by
perhaps by an invasion of these Bantu peoples? Could this be the Bantu expansion, which mainstream scientists confirm? I want to leave this sub-Saharan African history alone, though.
Okay, so
and turn our attention back to E1B1B.
all right, watch this.
North African and East African lineage, because it holds some even more clues that lead us closer to ancient Egypt. It's not just an African lineage. It spills over at low levels into the Middle East, the Arabian Peninsula, the Levant, so Israel and such, Jordan, Turkey, and Southern Europe. Basically absent from Northern Europe, Eastern Europe, India, China. It's North African, but also here. And this represents then the fulfillment of the promise that so-called black-white people exist. Light-skinned peoples who have African ancestry. Now, I have to correct something. I've said they've had it for thousands of years. In developing and doing the research for this presentation, I'm going to add a little caveat that we'll get to momentarily. But notice, there's a strong, dominant African lineage that has a presence in Spain, Italy, Balkan Peninsula. There are Europeans running around, probably look like me and Ken. And this is going to have spillover into the Americas, Australia as well, other places that were settled by Europeans. There are people who have ancestry in Africa and don't know it. Could be white supremacists who have ancestry in Africa and don't know it. Who are these people? To answer that question, I want to bring in the question of language again.
So I'm gonna move a little ahead because I want you to know that it gets to the point where you are gonna know that these are actually gonna be people related with the Islamic conquest that happened. And he also knows because they spill over with the J of the Turks, and he knows that they are gonna have some mingling going on. But I want to show you a certain part here a little later on. So right here, you can see they're talking about the Turks and all those things. And you can see he basically just talks about how they spill over. And these are actually going to be the Arabs. So you can see right here how they blend in a little bit. He talks about that a little bit.
The combination of J and E1B1B fits the distribution. You have to remember that after Muhammad comes the Turkish peoples, and it makes sense. There's an intriguing geographic correlation that I want to explore further. Who are these E1B1B peoples? So let's go back to the tree.
I'm gonna skip a little ahead.
Mutually exclusive.
Right here.
E1B1A is down here. So in a sense, we're getting about A and B.
This is what we want to look at. We want to look at E1B1A.
These two E lineages cover most of Africa, and they're sort of mutually exclusive by and large. They're basically North African and Sub-Saharan African lineages. This is the dominant lineage in dark-skinned African people. Well, these two lineages have a common ancestor around 500 BC. Again.
Now, if you note here, he says that it's 500 BC, but you got to know what he's working with. He's actually working with the system that the people that designed. Now, let me show you something. You got to understand what he's actually working with here before we proceed forward. Let me go back. I'm going to go to something here. Now, if you ever heard of the Out of Africa idea, you probably already heard how they try to say the DNA matches the Out of Africa idea. Well, that's false. The DNA doesn't match the Out of Africa idea, and they admitted themselves. It has to do with two lines, the BT and the CT haplogroup. Now, I'm going to show you what it looks like on the tree right here. You can see right in the middle, there's going to be CT right there, and then BT right here. Let me show you what it says about these things before I continue on. Watch what it says here. First, let me go down to something, and I want to just read you a quote here. As I did live on this, a 1 hour live, if you want to see it, it was a whole, like a little hour or two where I actually go over that the Out of Africa theory is false, and they admitted themselves. They actually admitted themselves, as it actually says right here. This is actually on a real genetic report. Watch what it says here. Apparently, they were too focusing. They were too much focusing on bending the data to fit out of Africa. Now, that's important to understand because they actually knew for a fact that when they brought up the Out of Africa idea, they actually witnessed that the Western media was cheerful and supported it. But they actually put right at the bottom, in reality, there were practically no other genetic justifications. They actually admit there's no genetic justifications, because what they do is that they engineered B2, where you see BT, you see BT right there? BT is actually younger than CT. And what they do is actually have the African groups. Now, if you look on a common chart, besides these arrows on here, you'll see that it'll look like A is actually descending into BT. They actually witness that that's false, because it actually degrades over time. It doesn't descend, because what they try to do is illustrate Ham. Basically, everyone began as a Hamite and became a Shemite, or became a Japhanite, which we know isn't true. But watch, they even admit it on here. I'm going to show you right here. This is a quote that's actually on here. It says this: "We know that neither BT nor CT descended from African haplogroups." This is a quote. This is quote unquote on here, that they know that the design that they designed was actually a false design, and many other people talk about it on here. I just want you to know that the out of Africa idea is false, and the years that he's working with is converting the years that they put there, so that he's trying to make the years and the time frame right. So that's why he's not finding out who is these people, because he's thinking the split happened around 500 BC. So that's why he didn't never find the answer, because he has to work with that year, which 500 BC is not when that split happened. 500 years is not when that split happened. So I just wanted you to know that that's the only thing that he gets wrong here, is the year for that split, the time frame for that split. And we're going to look at that. And in fact, they even admitted themselves. Let me show you what they say themselves there. I'm going to show you what they actually say about that split real fast, because that they actually found out that the information that they were putting out is actually more complex than they thought, because they thought the split happened very early, but the split was actually a later split. Let me actually show you where that's said real fast. I'm going to show you that one real fast at the bottom. All right, so right here, this is in Nature. There is an increasing evidence. There is an increasing evidence that the expansion was a more complex process than originally thought, and that neither a single demographic event nor an early split between Western and Eastern groups occurred. It says, and then basically they talk about the study on how they know that it's more of a complex idea. So they basically letting us know that the split was at a more further back time. It was at a more further back time. And with that, I'm going to actually read this right here. Watch what it says right here. This also talks about the split and how they got into Africa and a couple things. Africa supports the suggestion of rapid expansion. The reason why is because if you look at where these groups are, just like how he showed on his little thing, if you look at where these groups are, this is what it would look like. You can see the E1B1A all in the lower, mostly in the western of Africa, some in a little bit of the south, not for too much in the lower. And it's because there's going to be A lines down there. And you can see right here, we can see also Ishmael, right? And we can see some in the lower, and that's because there's a lot of A lines, a lot of them mixed down there at the bottom. But you can see most of the pure ones are going to be usually around the Horn of Africa, where you see right here, well, the Horn as in this area where the Arabian Felix is right here. And you can see this is going to be the E1B1B. This is going to be your E1B1A. We can see a clear difference between these groups. Now I'm going to go back up, and I'm going to read this to you. I want to read you what this actually says over here. Let me actually go up to it, and I'm going to read you what it said on this thing. It says, Africa supports the suggestion of rapid expansion because of the separation of two major waves around, they say 3,500, basically year before present. YBP is year before present. Now, it's important to note that obviously there's no millions and billions of years, but let's work with the numbers. And the subsequent isolation of many groups, modern Bantu languages can be divided into West and East Bantu. Now, this is important because they say the suggestion was actually a long time ago, a longer time ago than actually what they was actually assuming. They was assuming that the people was actually in the land. And that's because of the false idea of the first charts they were bringing out, and they actually changed it around 2016. And they actually changed the idea because they actually tried to make it out of Africa idea by altering the information. They know it. They actually mentioned it themselves that they were altering information. It says it is also suggested that although the Bantu speaking basically the people may have replaced, now note this right here, it's going to note that the original people of Africa were replaced. It says have replaced to a substantial extent hunter-gatherers in their past. Now, hunter-gatherers, they call the hunter-gatherers A and B. That's why because the reason why they call them hunter-gatherers is because they are actually more ancient. They say that they're ancient, but we know Ham is younger than Japheth. But they say that they're more ancient, but they have the A and B lineages. They're actually saying that the A and B lineage was actually moved from the area. They replaced the E1B1A, actually covered more of the area of Africa, is what it's saying there. That's why they call it the Bantu expansion. Is a classic talk that many geneticists talk about. Hunter and gatherers in their path, they have also in some places coexisted and interbred with the original inhabitants. So some places they have mixed. That's why you see in that lower area, you see a lot of E and you see a lot of B and 1. They're going to be in that area. Think, a mix Israel and Ham. That's not uncommon, right? Think of Judah when he mixed with the Canaanite woman, and a lot of things that had happened in those times. So you already can see that Israel had mixed in very early in different times with Ham. So sometimes that would happen. So now, but isn't it also important? Ham is not Shem, right? That's the most important thing. Ham is not Shem, and Shem is not Ham. And they note that. They actually note that is important. Now, I'm going to skip this part because this actually goes over something that I'm going to come back to, but I'm going to go down real fast. Now, I want to show you that I also verified with family tree DNA because it's also important to know different DNA tests they have different professions, but I'll talk about that. I double checked this with family tree DNA. I double verified on which branch are ancient branches that no one has today, but was seen in the past to verify the findings are sure and true. Because if someone has some of these older branches, that means that those are actually going to be not what we're actually looking at. These are going to be modern branches. But if we confirm that they're older branches, then that can be indeed potential Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And the oldest one is M2, which is the last one before the split of the 12. Watch what it says right here, what they sent me. Thank you for contacting family tree DNA. We won't predict you to E1B1A exactly, which is also known as EV38. However, we will predict you to EM2, right? Because EM2 is where it breaks off. Now it says, which is one of the major subclades of that haplogroup. Obviously, subclade is actually going to be our basically stop point. It's basically whoever is Israel, they're going to all be linked to this EM2, which is actually going to be basically E1B1 for the sake of understanding. It says, which is one of the major subclades of the haplogroup, which being predicted, it would mean that you belong to E1B1A, obviously because of the branch, how they're connected. Now, the reason why I contacted family tree DNA, because if you look up these different DNA companies, each one has a different profession on what they actually are more focused on. And if you want to expert in Y chromosome, you want to go to family tree DNA. That's going to give you a direct and more professional targeting on E1 lines, like your Y chromosome. Now let's look at this interesting line. I want to show you an interesting line. Now, when we look at this, you can see Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and this will be the 12. And I'm going to show you that they actually mentioned that there's 12 branches that comes from Israel. In fact, let's go down to that real fast and talk about that. Is there 12 branches that come from Jacob? Yes. There are 12 branches that actually proceed from Jacob. Now, watch what it says here. Of the possible 17 haplogroups, 12 were observed in the complete data set with E1B1A model. You heard what he just said there? I'm going to show you another one where they actually did a later test, and you can see right here, because remember, at first they only had a few haplogroups. They only had 17 haplogroups. But after a lot of testing, this was older. After a lot of testing, now they have 20. They have 20 different haplogroups, right? You can count them. Like, for example, what does that mean with those different haplogroups? Let me actually go up here to a chart with haplogroups groups. So we can look at that, which I believe is actually somewhere right here, right? We can count them. Once you can see A, 1, 2. I'm just gonna count down from A to S, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, right? And you can see it's gonna be a couple of different groups. Obviously, there's also a little more on this one for sake of understanding, as this time frame would be on what they had, because they also found C. C was also an interesting find that they had found. But let me show you what it says right here. You can see right here, now they got 20. It says the comparison with data from Africa allow placing the most likely origin of 12 out of 20 potential founders. The results pointed to multiple origins when they still try to tell you their origin, obviously. But you can see right here, it's talking about, this is actually talking about E1B1A. So it says, again, obviously, remember, it does not give you geographic location. Don't let them try to tell you the location of where you're from. There's also a lineage that they found that they could not trace. The reason why is because that's the A00. A00, they could not trace to anyone because it's not linked to anyone. But let me actually show you. I meant to put this thing on Wi-Fi so it can have some signal. All right, let me show you something. So you see how there's 12. They let you know there's 12 branches in E1B1A. That's extremely potential for Israel, right? In fact, not just that, there's one more thing that few people actually know. Let me actually unlink this thing and link it back real fast, because I just turned the Wi-Fi on and I want this to be fairly smooth. Go back real fast and go right here. All right, now check this out. I want you to see this. Remember what they said. There's 12 branches in E1B1A. Look at this. There also is 4 original mothers. Pay attention to what they say here. Watch what it says here. It says, among the 120 DNA donors composing, basically it talks about the 4 Beninese population samples, genotyped, according to the polygeny given in basically as figure 1. It says 12 Y chromosome haplogroups were observed, right? 12, like we said, 12 Y haplogroups were observed. Most of the individuals belong to one of the 4, note this, one of the 4 subgroups. What does he mean, the subgroups? Now and I already put these subgroups down. I'm going to show you that these are actually 4 branches that branch out and gives you those 12 groups. It's actually 4 groups that are actually going to have 4 different mothers. And I'm going to show you that is the mother that's actually affecting this. It's the mother that's actually affecting the Y chromosome. Few people actually notice that the mother's line actually affects the Y chromosome. Here's the arrows. You see the arrow right here? And it actually tells us those numbers. Here's those groups right here at the top right here. Note these groups right here, these 4 groups. So you can see this is going to be one group. This is going to be another group right in the middle. This is going to be another group on the side right here. This is going to be a group. This arrow right here just leads to more, which is right here, different group. So you can see 4 branches. And let me show you why that is. Let's go down and I'm going to show you why there's 4 branches that's like that. I'm going to go down and show you that real fast on this thing for the sake of understanding, as I think it's important to see this as well. Watch what it says right here. So remember with the tribes, obviously there's 12 tribes and they had 4 mothers, right? Leah, right? You see what's going on there. Let me show you what's going on here. So you see the 4 mothers right there. Let me go up here, right here. Watch what it says here, right? You see how they just confirmed to us again? It says 12 Y chromosome haplogroups were observed. Most of the individuals belong to one of the 4 subgroups. So he tells the 4 groups. Now, why are there 4 samples? Why are there 4? I'm going to show you what actually 23andMe says. So they're a little more understanding on some of these things as well. Watch what it says here. First, understanding a little bit more about the Y chromosome is helpful. The Y chromosome does undergo recombination with the X chromosome. You heard what I just said there? it said that the Y chromosome does go a recombination with the X chromosome at its ends. So it tells you that 95% will stay the same. The female's Y chromosome alters a little bit the male's line. And the reason why you got the 4 different main lines that branch out from those 12 is because of the 4 mothers with your X chromosome. That's the reason why it's like that. So you can see that's going to be evident of the 12 tribes and 4 mothers. That's your evidence for the 12 tribes and the 4 mothers that are actually there in Israel. So I just wanted to show you that. And as always, this link is going to be in the description so you can actually see these things yourself, as they're always cited with their sites and the links that are actually to them as well. Here's an example. Now, I don't know exactly what those 12 branches are. I want you to understand that. But I made an example of what it would look like. This is what it would probably look like for the sake of understanding. And understand this first one, M2. Remember how we verified that M2 is an ancient branch? That's an ancient branch that no one has. And that's where the 12 descends from. That's where the 12 comes out from, which they also note that there's 12 branches that come from E1B1A. Now, note here, this E1B1A right here, it gets 12 branches that branch off from that M2. M2 is Jacob that has those 12 sons, right? Now, let me show you something real fast. I'm going to go down and show you this example. From M2 comes these 12 branches. Now, obviously, I don't know the exact 12, but this is what I just show you this for example. This is an example. As I also put this here again, this is a sample of what was said for a visual. This is a sample. This is a sample. So basically what it's telling you, from all these branches, you have 12 branches, and from these 12 branches comes us all. All of us come from these 12 branches. They basically saying when you ultimately trace it back, there's 12 branches where everyone comes from. That's actually what the geneticists find. That's actually what the geneticists find. Now, we also got to verify the Ham, Shem, and Japheth split. We got to verify that they do sit on a split of Ham, Shem, and Japheth. Let's actually verify it. But first, we have to verify again that B2 and CT. Why? Because if you look at this, it looks like A is descending into BT, but that's not actually how it's designed. They know that the African, like they said, word for word, right? Like I showed you, it just told us that the African lines do not actually go into them. And there's actually right here, what you're seeing right here, this is a genetic information that you actually see. Another geneticist tried to challenge the person named Dr. Nathaniel Jensen. He tried to challenge him, but that didn't go so well. Obviously, because he basically just showed that he's right. He basically showed that Jensen is right in all that he's actually pointing out. Because what Jensen actually pointed out, that there are, I'm actually put it like this because I found out Jensen has an A in it. You can actually see he mentions this. This is someone else. This is someone that was examining Jensen's work. He said, it is true that the 3 major haplogroups have long been recognized by mainstream science. You hear what I just said there? It's basically saying it is true that the 3 major haplogroups have long been recognized by mainstream science. That means that there are 3 groups, Ham, Shem, and Japheth, and mainstream science actually recognize that. And he puts the arrows there to show you that he knows that there are 3 different groups. We can actually identify those groups. Now, just to verify to you one more time for the sake of understanding, that, let me go down a little bit right here. This BT, if you can find evidence of this BT being younger than CT. You see right here where it says 50,000 years for this BT right here. The reason why is because they try to put that BT obviously right there. That BT you don't even need it for the sake of understanding, because they try to put it so that it can have all the Africans descend into it. Except they're not descending, they're actually going to be degrading later on, if that makes sense. So you see BT, you can see 60,000 years. But let me show you what a geneticist actually, when he put out a paper in 2013, he actually brought out CT older than BT. So you can see BT is actually right there 71,000 years ago. The reason why I want you to see is because I want you to know that there is a clear understanding of the split of Ham, Shem, and Japheth. I just want you to understand that this, what you're seeing here, right here, this is the actual split of Ham, Shem, and Japheth. Don't get confused with that A00. We'll talk about that A00 and who that belongs to. And I believe that that is the Y chromosome of Aaron. And I'm going to show you when I get to it that that's why I believe it is, because it's going to be something that is groundbreaking. It's actually a novel find. It's a groundbreaking find. So again, this is why I skipped mentioning E, a little history on it, because there is a obvious find of E. And if you notice here, look right here. This is the Euphrates. This is up the rivers, right? The Euphrates rivers. I think this is Euphrates for the sake of understanding. And this is actually important because remember, Abraham went up here to get his wife. So that means that his people was near in this area. Of course, they're going to be moving around because remember, Abraham was just able to just go into Canaan, right? He was able to just enter the land. That means they were welcomed in. He was able to just go into that area. That means he was welcomed in. That means a lot of his ancestors would have been found there, and they are. His ancestors, his family line is actually found in this area. That ancient branch of E1B1 is found in the Middle East. So we have evidence of the people in the Middle East. We have evidence of the 4 mothers that they would have came from. We got evidence of 12 tribes that would have been from E1B1A. These are undeniable and genetic facts. Undeniable genetic facts. Just to let you know, because remember, in genetics, it's not a guessing game. It is always about facts. Now, just like how I talked about Ishmael a little bit, I have a video directly on E1B1B. It's going to have historical facts, linguistic facts, genetic facts, and it's just going to let you know that E1B1B is indeed the Arab. But there is also a line if we look at right here, in the line of Israel, there is a one branch that is a little different that no one else, that only one group have. One group have it, and it's E1B1C. Now, this is the line. Understand when I say this, is E1B1C M329, right? E1B1C, at first, it was in the line of Ishmael. Someone put it in the line of Ishmael. So when people were saying, technically, it's ironic because people were saying E1B1B is Ishmael. Technically, at that time, they did have Esau in the line of Ishmael at that time. So it was very ironic. But after they updated this, they actually made a new design because after they found, now, few people noticed, but A00 had every SNP. They didn't have to do DNA testing of everyone. They just needed A00. A00 actually designed the whole chart for them. They didn't need to do sequencing on everyone. Otherwise, they would have had to get hundreds of people of different cultures and do testing on them all. But A00 actually gave them the design of all the SNPs, right? SNPs are all ancient lines. It actually gave us the full picture. So basically, there is people walking around with a DNA map on them. They have a DNA map. That's what A00 is. It's a whole picture of all the trees at once. That's what A00 is, and it's impossible to have such a thing like that. But we'll talk about that when we get there. That gave the whole understanding to what was the reality of DNA. A00. Always remember that. It gave the understanding to the whole design of the people. And understand, because they can't do testing, they can't test someone from the past if they can't find them, right? They can't find M2 if they can't find someone who has M2, which is Jacob. But because they had A00, they was able to map it because they had it all written out on A00, which has all SNPs or SNPs. Now, watch what it says here. This is actually going to be talk about something really interesting. This is going to be E1B1C. I want to show you who has E1B1C. Only one people has it. I'm going to show you now who's the people that have it. These are the people who have it. They're called the, how you say that? Orama people, basically like that, for the sake of understanding. And they're the only people found with E1B1C, and they have an interesting tradition. Their tradition is that they dye their hair red. Their tradition is that they dye their hair red, and this is a ceremony that's done amongst them all the time. And they're the only ones that have E1B1C, but why do they dye their hair red? Why is it that they dye their hair red? Could it be that there's a tradition maybe they're honoring someone who they knew that had red hair, and maybe they seen red hair as a pretty thing, as maybe one of their descendants had red hair and they liked it. Now remember, Esau, it's important to remember the story of Esau. What did Esau, and this is his branches. These are the branches of E1B1C, and only one people have it, as you can see. And it's also important, obviously, the female line is in multiple different people, but the male line is only in one. Remember what it said about Esau, right? Esau actually mixed in with the Hittites. You can see right here, Esau took his wives of the daughters of Canaan, right? Of Canaan, the Hamites, right? And then he took a Hittite, which is also a Hamite. So he took a Hittite, who is also a Hamite, 4 Hittites. He actually got with 4 Hittites for the sake of understanding. And he got with Ishmaelites. He got with Ishmaelites. So he got with Canaanites, he got with Hittites, and he got with Ishmaelite women. That's very important to know. And that's what we see when we actually look at some of the genetics. They're only found in this area in the, Ethiopia, right? That's the only place you find it. So this line is rare. It's actually extremely rare. And this is one of the only places we can see that. It's the only place we actually see that line. And remember, it's going to be under Jacob. Remember, it's underneath Jacob, but it's going to be a different branch, right? It's going to be a different branch, yet it's underneath Jacob, right? You can see it's from Jacob, but it's going to be a different branch. Well, next to Jacob, for the sake of understanding. Not from Jacob, from Isaac. As you can see, it's from Isaac, but not from Jacob, though it's going to be related to Jacob, but not of the 12. They noted the 12, but that's not going to be the same as this one. So there's the evidence of Esau in the line of Israel, for the sake of understanding. Now let's actually go on and look at something else, because obviously we're just scratching the surface for the sake of understanding. As this note is for you, this is a solid piece of evidence for anything that anyone can throw at you, because you cannot debate genetics. In fact, let me show you something about genetics and about those SNPs and those things that I was just saying there. I want to show you and like a STR and things like that. I'm going to show you something about that a little bit right here. I'm going to show you this.
A short tandem repeat, or STR, is a region of DNA composed of a short sequence of nucleotides repeated many times. Since the number of repeated sequences in a given STR varies from person to person, pinpointing these variants can be useful in DNA fingerprinting. As the name implies, the repeated stretches in STRs are short, only 2 to 10 base pairs long. For this reason, and because they are dispersed more evenly throughout the genome than the longer variable number tandem repeats, or VNTRs, STRs are favored by forensic labs. Large databases of information on STRs in the general population tell analysts how much variation exists at any given STR location. That information can help forensic analysts determine the conclusiveness of a match between 2 samples. If 10% of people have the same number of repeats at a given STR, for example, finding a match at that site is merely suggesting that 2 samples are a match. If 2 sites with the same prevalence match, the odds drop to 1 in 100 that the similarity is coincidental.
Now watch what it says about the odds here. Watch what it says about the odds.
If 13 sites match, the odds that any 2 people would possess such a fingerprint are so small, about 1 in 10 trillion, that the result can be considered a definitive match.
1 in 10 trillion. For them to make a mistake, on the DNA is a 1 in 10 trillion chance. Do you understand that this evidence that you actually see in the genetics is so tight, it cannot be altered ever. It cannot be altered. In fact, let me show you something. Let me actually show you something real fast. Let me close this. I want to show you something. I'm going to show you something that's really interesting. I think you should see. Let me actually show you something up here. Right? Because they can't change it. They can't alter it. In fact, they can't change it so much. In fact, it's down here. Let me show you something. Few people notice about Y chromosome. The Y chromosome is basically like it's like a jewel. It's like a jewel. It's like a jewel that lived. It was a live jewel, and once it was completely filled, it froze in time. It's unchangeable. Right? For example, your genetics are the same as the last group from almost 1,000, 2,000 years ago. They actually mentioned right here, MTRCT actually is going to be your basically the most recent common. That TMRCA actually means the most recent common ancestor, right? Actually, it's just saying the most recent common ancestor, or the TMRCA, for E1B1A as a whole was estimated. Watch what it says here. It just says 6,000 years ago. You heard what it just said there? It's basically just lets you know that from the beginning of time, it says that the people, their common ancestors, they're from the beginning of time. But let's look at this next one. Watch what it says here. With the most common ancestor, or the TMRCA, for the youngest haplogroup. Watch what it says. Now the youngest one, which is E1B1A8A1A. This is the final and last change in the Y chromosome. And guess when that happened? It's not yesterday. It's not because someone was born and they was another person. It's because it stopped and froze in time almost 2,000 years ago, years before present, right? The YBP, that's years before present. The last time your Y haplogroup changed was 2,000 years ago. That means you almost got the same Y chromosome as the time of the people that left Jerusalem. That's what it's saying there. It's saying if you find someone in Jerusalem, you might find that they have the same haplogroup type. That's what it's saying there. It's possible to find someone with the same haplogroup type because it stayed in place and did not change for almost 2,000 years. That's how advanced 1 to 2,000 years, for the sake of understanding. That's how advanced the Y chromosome is. It's frozen in time as a genetic piece of evidence of the actual people of who they are. And in fact, guess what you see when you go to Africa? You see some of the purest people. In fact, you know, usually the only mix you see in the Israelites is E1B1B, or sometimes A or B, or you see sometimes R. You don't see a lot of stuff in them unless you get like certain groups like the Limba that has a high J. And the reason why is probably most likely from those Turkish invasions that happened, or somewhere upper in the area, because we already verified that the J is the Turk, for the sake of understanding. But notice right here, E1B1A is in a lot of people in that area, because remember how much people are there. So of course they're going to stay pure. If they're constantly mixing with different E lines, guess what's going to happen? They're going to be a very pure stock, and that's how we can see that they are Israel. This is Israel because they have 12 different branches that break off from one ancient branch, and we have evidence that their father brought forth the Ishmaelites. We have evidence of that, and we also have evidence of them remaining pure. This is what it looks like when you have a society ran by men. A men's society is where the women are actually coming into the men, but not a lot of the men are actually mixing. And we actually notice that in the book of the Bible, because it says that even the men of each tribe had to usually stick to their own tribe. And we get that with the women, where it says if a woman goes to another tribe, she's absorbed into that tribe. She lost her heritage of the tribe that she was in before. That's actually, we know that because scripture lets us know these things. But let me go up and show you something. Let me show you something. This is what it looks like when you're mixed. This is the idea of a mixed design. This is the Ashkenazi design. Now, let me actually explain something to you right here. The possibility of this being Israel is slim to zero, -15. You know why? Because it means that this is a society. This is what a society looks like when it's ran by women. The reason why this is important, because you don't get when you mix with someone, you don't get half and half DNA. Like for example, if a J mixed with an R, you don't get half and half. You get pieces of DNA. You get partial points of DNA, right? So like, for example, if a J mixed with R, he would get a piece of the DNA, but he would get the piece of the recent DNA, not the ancient DNA. If you find ancient DNA in someone, do you know what that means? That means they're the same people of ancient time. That means they actually are descendants from those ancient people for them to get the ancient DNA. Do you know that the Ashkenazi actually had the ancient V88 DNA that's actually seen in ancient people of old? Not just that, but other ancient branches that are from ancient people of old. In fact, it's most likely that I'm not even going to get to it because I actually have like 4 different videos where I go over the problems with the genetic information in the Ashkenazi. And now understand this. These are multiple male lines. In fact, we can count them. We can count how many male lines just off of the different letters. J, that's going to be of Japhetic. E, that's going to be of, they say, Hamitic. or for how they say Hamitic, but it's actually Shemitic, because E1, that E35 right there, that E35 right here, that's actually going to be of Ishmael. That's E1B1B. They actually find more E1B1B in them because a lot of the mixing that happened with Ishmael and the Turks that was going on in those areas. We actually find that in the Turks. This is actually a Turkish genetics that has J1 and J2 there. A high J that's actually there. And you can see right here, J1, J2. I just want to show you in comparison. These are multiple males. These are multiple different lineages. These are multiple males. They got Shem, they got Ham, they got Japheth. They got a whole rainbow here. They're not one people. They're multiple people. It's important to understand that what we're actually when I'm bringing this information, I want you to understand when you see the Y chromosome, there is a people that is pure and there's a different people that is not pure. Now that doesn't make anyone different in the sense of the spirit, but in the sense of truth of the flesh. If we want to bring forth the truth of the flesh, we need to understand that genetics is the way to go to bring forth the understanding. We can't just look at someone and tell that they are. Because a lot of people, when they look at people, they say, oh, you're not black, you're not white, or you're this thing or that thing. We can't judge off of flesh, but we got to look at the information that's actually underneath the flesh, right? It's what's inside that counts. It's what's inside that counts, is what I'm saying. So that's why I want to show you this, because I want you to also see one more thing. Besides we can look at different peoples, right? We can see their Y chromosome and everything. I'm just gonna leave these here as this note is for you. You can see these things. You can look at who is who and different Y chromosomes and look at those things and whatnot, as it has more links and different things like that. But let me show you something here. Let me go down and actually show you something. There is a DNA study. Few people know about this. Now we're gonna talk about who is called the Sephardic Jews. If you know, what does Sephardic actually mean? Now, if you look deep, I have a deep video that actually goes into Sephardic, the word Sephardic. There's a people that actually was called a Sephardim or Sephardi. That's actually a different people that were actually of a European stock that actually started calling them the Sephardic Jews that were actually Turks. But there is a people who are called the Sephardic Spanish Jews. Sephardic actually means Spanish in Spain. This group right here are actually related to a group that was in, as you see right there, Turkey. That was a group that was sent by Babylon that was actually in that area. They was also brought to Portugal. And they know that they're related. We know because I actually have a book with a quote that actually links them with those people who were taken from Babylon. That links them to the same people. But listen to this. It says location. Basically, just for the sake of understanding, they found E1B1A in Portugal, is what they're saying. They found E1B1A in Portugal. And it's important to know because this is before the slave trade. They found this in Portugal. They know that they found it and they actually located where it's from. You can see Angola. A lot of the Jews, it's actually historical quotes that they mix with the Angolian women. And if you look at the Angolian DNA is actually purely E1B1A. They're actually purely E1B1A. And they actually mix with those women. Now, what's important is that we're going to look at some really interesting. I'm going to show you a real rare report. This is a report from the 1700s. Let me show you something here. It says archaeologists find bound. Listen to what he says here. He find bound bodies of enslaved, quote unquote, Africans in Portuguese trash dumps. So what are they killing? Why are they bounding these people and putting them in trash dumps? Guess why? Because if you do a little history on the Inquisition, you actually find out that a lot of the Jews were actually the ones who were being persecuted a lot that remained in that area. Why would someone actually find someone bound and put in a trash dump and supposedly they was a slave? You know what they usually would do with a slave? They'll either send them away, send them to prison. They don't take them. And in fact, let me show you something real fast, because it's also important to note how old these people were. It says right here, it talks about in the 1500s. Just gonna close. I can't even close that ad. I was gonna close that ad. It says early in the 15th century. What was going on in the 15th century? The expulsion of the Jews. It says in the 15th century, Portuguese explorer talks about what happened. He found a new place with 150 skulls in a dump, 150 of them. And it says it revealed that many of them were so-called enslaved Africans. They were not. It says they were not given a proper burial, right? It actually lets us know that that area was used between 15 and 1700s, right? It said they supposedly was of African origin. And they said that they supposedly say they were people enslaved. Here's an idea of what they look like. Their arms are tied behind their back. If you see, he's laying face down, arms tied behind his back, feet kind of tied as well. And he's buried just about not even a foot down. So you can see what's going on there. Let me actually close that. Let me actually see, because sometimes these articles have a little introduction. I don't know if this one does, but let me go down. I'm gonna show you something, because you haven't seen nothing yet. It's really important to understand what happened here. Let me see real fast. I want to show you what's said here, if this is the one. Actually, I think it's a different flyer. I'm gonna show you down here, this one right here. But let me read you what's quoted there. It says, the research team believes that around 1/3 of the skeletons, watch what it says here, that 1/3 of the skeletons were from under 18 years old, pretty much. It said most of the skeletons were under 18 years old. It says that only 3%, because if you know who was taken from Spain, you're gonna know, and we're gonna look at it. I'm gonna show you who was taken from Spain. It was children. It was children that was taken from Spain. A lot of the elders died, and they went through it. It says, and that only 3% were from people aged 30 or more. Only 3%. Only 3% of who was in those graves were 30 years older and more. Doesn't sound like a slave. How valuable is a slave that's underneath 18 years old? How valuable is a slave under 18 years old? It doesn't sound like something you would just kill, tie it behind their back, and bury like they're a piece of meat. That doesn't sound right, right? It says, a few would know the historical sources to confirm these individuals that were bound and were buried are indeed the original Ishmaelites. These are the real Israels, meaning the real Israelites, for the sake of understanding. Let me show you another one. This is in Portugal. This is in Spain. This is what was going on in Spain, and we're looking at who they are. You can see this one buried right here. Skeleton found in Portugal, mass grave belonging to so-called African slaves. When did they have African slaves and just buried them in Portugal? We got to ask ourselves these things, because this is important to understand. They confirmed them supposedly had the West African or Bantu speaking, right? The Bantu speaking with the DNA samples that they found. Look at what it says right here. The research team believes that around 1/3 of the skeletons were under 18 years old, and that only 3% were from people 30 or more years old. That's what they actually say right here, that these were children. That's what they're actually saying here. They're saying that these children were bound and they were buried. Whatever happened to them, obviously the mass number of it, 150 of them, children, buried in Portugal. You got to ask the question, why it says many of the skeletons were found in uncommon burial positions, indicating that the so-called slaves had their limbs tied to their necks, or in other cases, both hands tied to their backs. In other cases, the hands were placed in strand positions in the front. Like, like your classic cuff your hands in the front type style is what he's saying there. He says, these burial positions provide us with details and descriptions of glimpse into the early period of the European so-called African slave trade. You see what it's saying there? Now, who actually implemented the slave trade? It was the Portuguese. It was the Portuguese. Now let's look at, now remember, these are children. These are children that were taken here. Let me show you a historical quote right here. I'm gonna show you a historical quote. This is a critical review of Annals of Literature, volume 7. Now, volume is important with this type of book. Volume 57. Volume 57, and the quote is gonna be right here. It's gonna be right here. It's gonna be from 1784. 1784. It's gonna talk about King John right here. We're gonna see King John. We're gonna talk about King John again. We're gonna talk about King John III, and we're gonna talk about a lot of the ones who descend from him. So note this: King John. King John in 1492 expelled all the Jews, right, to the island. Now the F right there, it looks like an F, but it's S. Just note that as we go over those things right here. So King John of 1492 expelled all the Jews to the island. Notice where he says the Jews are going to be at. To the island of Saint Thomas. So who's on St. Thomas? The Jews, right? Which had been discovered in 1471. So the Portuguese discovered this island in 71 and moved the Jews there. No one was there at this island. Only one type of people was in this island. It says, and to other Portuguese settlements on the continent of Africa, right? And from these banished Jews, the Black Portuguese, as they are called, and the Jews of Lingado, who are, I don't know how you say that, described even by the very Negro. He just said it described as the Negro, are descended. You heard what he just said there, right? Watch what it says here. It's very important to understand that it just verified that these are Black Portuguese Jews that are sent to Saint Tomé, right? That's actually St. Thomas. St. Thomas, Saint Tomé, for the sake of understanding. It says, by some colonists, Saint Tomé soon became a considerable place for trade and valuable for its sugar plantations. 30 years after their settlement, not less than 156,000 arobes or of dirty, basically a bunch of sugar of pounds of 30 pounds weight each. Basically talk about a lot of pounds of sugar for the sake of understanding of sugar were exported. And it just talks about right here, it says the emergence of 60 sugar works turned by slaves. So it's basically let us know that 60 sites were there where slaves worked there. And these are the same slaves. These are the same slaves that were sent there, and so-called slaves. These Negroes who was sent there, remember who was sent to St. Thomas, and they're called Negroes. He just called them Negroes. These Negroes was punished in Guinea, Congo, and Morocco, men in Congo for the sake of understanding. And the colonists had plantations furnished with from 150 and 3,000 Negro slaves. You see what it just said there? It says, in the beginning of the 16th century, the Spanish and Portuguese began to transport Negroes. Now, it's important to understand where the term Negro actually means, well, how far it goes back and what it actually means. There was a person named Yaya Negro. His name was Negro. And these children were actually his children, descending from him. And a lot of them actually started to come together and just call themselves Negro after him because he became a very big person in Spain. You can look him up. He's a famous person. They'll whitewash him. Be careful of the whitewashing of Yaya Negro. Yaya Negro was how this word got famous. And also the Negro Valley, for the sake of understanding. For similar labor to the West, and notice they went to the West Indies. And where's the West Indies? It's going to be in America, where you actually see Jamaica, and the Bahamas. It says the Spanish Portuguese began to transport Negroes to similar labors to the West Indies and Brazil, by which the Negro trade was rapidly increased. And that's where the slave trade begins. Now you just know the history of the slave trade. Now you know the history of the slave trade, basically the summary of the slave trade. That's what you just basically seen right there. I'll show you right here. What you just saw was a summary of the slave trade, how it began from Portugal's, and they sent them to all these different areas, and that's where the slave trade began. Now you know about the triangular slave trade, direct history, quote unquote, from the time of the 1700s. Now let's look at these. Remember, where they send the Jews. One more time, read that top area. King John II in 1492 expelled all the Jews to the island of Saint Tomé. That's St. Thomas. Now let's go and see this historical report. This genetic report. Now you get back to genetics. Watch what it say here. Remember, genetics, 1 in a trillion chance to make a mistake. Watch what it says right here. Saint Tomé, or St. Thomas, island of St. Thomas. This says Saint Tomé Isles were probably uninhabited at the time of the Portuguese discovery in 1471. You heard what he just said there? Let me just zoom out a little bit so I can see that whole thing. Watch what it says here. Okay, so Saint Tomé or St. Thomas Islands were probably uninhabited at the time of the Portuguese discovery in 1471. Soon after that, the first settlers took place in 1486. Now this is actually going to be John, where it says Joan de Prave. That's actually John. That's actually the John that actually took them there, John II. It says, who took with him many Jews. Remember how we read that historical quote? The historical quote said he took Jews with him to this island, who took with him many Jews. One of the most controversial episodes of this colonization is the forced migration of Jewish children in 1492. The information, see how it's matching the history? The information about this occurrence is scarce and diverse between Jewish and Christian historians. Now, notice who was taken? Children. Notice what was taken. It says around 2,000 young children and teenagers. Remember how what we've seen with that report? That those were children that were buried in those graves? Can't deny it. Same genetics and the same people. Watch, you're going to see these are the same people too. 2,000 young children and teenagers were taken from their families, forcefully baptized, and sent to basically islands so that they could be far away from their Jewish faith. They grew up with a Christian education. They grew up with a Christian education and contributed to the population of the new territory, meaning that they became one at the territory. They actually are found in the same territory, and they're going to admit that they never left this area. They was never allowed to leave the island. They had to stay on the island. One of the main aims of the Portuguese king, you see this one's going to be his son. This is going to be John III. It's going to see, you see right there, Joy. The third is going to be John III right there. Several documents confirm that many of these children survived, and along with other settlers, mainly they say other settlers, but these are the same settlers. They'll tell you that there was different settlers there, but there's not. There's not other settlers. There's the same people. They'll say that of African origin. Stated the process of, right here it says, over more than a century, several documents attest to the continuous movement of quote unquote, there's only one group called this, only one, which are the Jews who converted. They're called New Christians. And you can see that these ones are actually going to be called New Christians. This group here is actually called New Christians to San Tome, which worked as a refuge from the Inquisitional persecutions, and also basically they sat in the location basically being those New Christians, basically, for the sake of understanding. Let's go down a little bit. Let's actually look at this, because now I'm going to show you a genetic study. What you're actually going to see here, I'm going to show you that this is a real genetic study. Let me actually confirm it to you for the sake of the live. Actually, this is going to be I'm going to go back to that. I'm going to go to that for the children in San Tome. But first, actually, let me click it. It's up here. Here's a genetic study. Let me show you that this is a real genetic study, as I think it's important to have evidence and see these things. Let me in fact, let me close this and click it again. I want you to see that this is a real genetic study. Right here, I'm gonna open this PDF. Here's the PDF. This is a real genetic study, what you're seeing here. I'm just gonna zoom out. You can see it yourself. These names right here, these are geneticists. You can see which universities they're from. You can see the names right there, the university. Just show that for the sake of the live. You can see it's gonna be a real genetic study. And I'm gonna read this right here on the side. It just says San Tome and Principe are the two main islands basically located off the Gulf of Guinea. And you can see we're just going to talk about some things. They also note the decree after the Portuguese decree of the expulsion of many new Christians. Remember, new Christians are going to be Jews. That's what a new Christian is. That's the only people they call new Christians. They're the Jews. Fled to San Tome, right? So it says there in San Tome, the Inquisition was never established there, right? But the Portuguese were there. The Inquisition wasn't there. The Inquisitions of Rome, right? Rome had its own control, and the Spain, they also would go to Rome for approvals of different things and everything. And it just talks about, watch what it says here. Several documents, watch what it says about several documents. Several documents attest to the continuous movement of new Christians because they kept on documenting if they moved or not because they wanted them. They wanted to keep them there to these islands. You see what it's saying there? They knew they was on these islands, and they knew that they was actually remaining here. And they actually says their name stayed. It says they shared surnames with those including in the historical reports as Jewish migrants. You see what it's saying there? It says their name stayed the same. When these people stayed in Portugal, their name stayed the same. They know that these are the same Jews that were sent to São Tomé. These are the same Jews that were sent to São Tomé, right? Showing culture practices prevalently relevant to the Jewish religion. So it's saying they even had Jewish practices. That's what he's saying, that these people on this island, they had the same practices, and they're going to do a DNA test on them to see who they are. Now let's look at that DNA test. Let's see what it's going to say here. Now I got this already screenshot on my thing, so I want you to see those highlights on here. Let's look at this. All right. It says haplogroup composition obtained for the Jewish descendants of São Tomé. You're going to now look at the actual. Now we can just look at it right now. E1B1A. Majority, for the sake of understanding, and this is actually important. Now remember how I told you they were kind of mixed with E1B1B. You can see a little bit of E1B1B there for the sake of understanding. I can look at that right now. You can see a little bit of E1B1B there. You also note a R mix in them. Now there's it seems like there was 4 major males that were mixing there, 4 major lineages of males of R. They would all be the same people. R was mixing with them. Now remember how I said they only get a small percentage? Understand that major percentage is who they are. Whenever you mix, you don't get a half and half genetics. You get a small portion, which doesn't make much of a difference for the sake of understanding. And we also see the L's in them. The L line showing us that that's indeed Israel. That's indeed Israel. You actually see one European line there, which is right here. You're gonna see one European line. They note that. They also got that L0, which is going to be really deep. I'm going to show you that too. But let's look at this. They had 246. There was 200. Listen to me when I say this. They got together 200 of these Jews on this island, 246 of them. And they're going to do a test on them. And notice what they say right here. They just say right here, I'm actually go to another one because this one just goes over a little better. You can see right here is going to get the direct detailed information. They say they're of M2. That's E1B1A. They say they're of M2. They say their branch stems on to M2, right? From P2, right? Because E3A is going to be of Israel, and then you have your Ishmaelites on this side. It's going to be a different people. They say they're not going to be Ishmael. They're actually going to be E1B1A. And they're going to be 80, for the clarity, just for clarity, 84.2%. For the sake of understanding, because of some of the admixtures there. But that's super high. Ashkenazis don't even have lines that high. A lot of the people of Israel have lines that high. That's extremely high. Anything above 50% means that's who they are. That's important to understand. The most frequent haplogroup found is E3A, 84%. The most widespread clade in sub-Saharan Africa, and by far the most frequent one in West African populations. That's the ones who went to the slave trade. We also know that's the ones who went to the slave trade because it's going to be mentioned when we look at 800, different things like that. The particular, let's go over here real fast, just for the sake of understanding. Remember how we talk about those ones from Angola? Now, we actually know that the Jews, is historically recorded that the Jews were mixing with Angola women. They actually know that that's true, but the Angola women were actually Israelites. They knew that for a fact, that the Angola women were at the same thing. They're the same people, for the sake of understanding. They were trying to say they were mixing with Africans. They say Angola women. They were indeed the people of Africa, which wouldn't change the Y chromosome. But watch what it says here. The second most common haplogroup in São Tomé e Príncipe is R1b, only 87%. Now, anything under 10%, you don't even consider it. 10% just means that they mixed a little bit. That's not the major line. That's not the major line. That's a small contribution to that peoples. It's very small. It says a typical haplogroup from Western Europe. It says most likely, now this is how, and what this actually is evidence that these are the same children, the same ones that were taken there, because for them to have a mix like this mean they had to be there at a certain time frame. And if you actually look at the mix in there, that means that they were actually mixing with Europeans. These are not the people native to Africa, or the E1B1A or E1, I mean, or or A lineages or B lineages that came over there, because this is actually an island that was owned by the Portuguese. And notice that it says right here, most likely carried by Portuguese settling their genetic contribution to this population. So if you're African, you're so-called African American, you find R in you, then you know what happened. You're the same descendants that had went through that slave trade, and they did what they did with those people for as long as they wanted to, because those were children on that island. And we actually find those same children that are actually bound and in position of abuse and disrespect that are buried in the lands of Spain. So this is extremely important to understand, that the evidence of who these individuals are shows that they had contact with a certain European, which was of Portugal. This is a certain group of them. And these individuals, which is not, that our line is not found commonly, in E1B1A individuals. That's a very rare mix in them. That's very rare. So this is how they know that these are those individuals. And remember how I told you that's only 8%? Now remember how I told you, and understand, it's not 8% for everyone. It can be lower for someone. It can be none for some, for the sake of understanding. But it's important to understand that that Y chromosome, only reason that they had that Y chromosome was because a small percentage was brought in. And that just shows you that they had a part in that point of history, And these are the real Jews of San Tome. What you just seen today was a illustration in a factual sense of who are the people and what do they look like? What does the Jews of San Tome look like? Let's make sure we take a look at the real Jews in San Tome, Principe. These are the children that were taken from Spain and brought forth more children. These are the Jews of San Tome y Principe that they themselves say had no inhabitants. They had no inhabitants until the Spanish took it, and they put inhabitants there. And you can see the mingling that had happened there, just to confirm that they had history together. These aren't just some people that just arrived there at their own will, but these are the individuals that are on San Tome y Principe, and these are the Jews that were taken for the slave trade. So what I just showed you was that E1B1A. Now let me show you A. Let me show you an understanding of A. The A lineage is very interesting, right? It has I can't even explain. I'm gonna show you it visually, but first let me show you who it comes from, right? If you look on any chart, if you just type down A00, right? If you look it up and you try to find A00, you'll find some very interesting things. Very interesting. But let me show you something real fast on a chart. Let me just go to a chart and show you what it looked like. In fact, I'm gonna go back down because I'm gonna go right to this, but let me go to it here. I'm gonna show you A00, the A00 haplogroup. The A00 haplogroup, you can look it up yourself. They'll try to say is of A. It's not of A. That's a lie. It's not of A. You see how it says right here where it says the known branches of haplogroup A is A00. That's false. A00 is not of A. It's important to know that. That's a false statement. Let me show you what A00 actually belongs to. We know it only is in one people, and it's not in anyone who has the lineage of A or B or anyone else for that sake. Watch what it says right here. I'm gonna show you where they find it. I'm gonna show you multiple reports of they all agree. A00 participants descends from a former, because at first they found some people in some places in Carolina. It says A00 participants descend from a former slave family in South Carolina. The closest matches are found in Western Cameroon. So that's obviously right here in Africa. And it says right here, near the Gulf of Guinea. Now, it's important to understand Guinea was an area where they moved the slaves, and Guinea was an area that on the map of Africa wasn't there before. It was added on as they started to learn about Africa. It's important to know that. At first, it was Libya, and everything under that was Ethiopia, and then they found Guinea. It's important to understand that. The Gulf of Guinea, a prime location in the slave trade. In the slave trade, it says there appears to be about 500 years between the participants and the samples from Cameroon, an age that speaks to the beginning of the slave trade, an age that speaks to the beginning of the slave trade. Now watch what it says here. It says, derived mutations on this lineage, which we name, they name this. It's important to understand. They give it the name. It doesn't matter if they call it X42 or E1A00. It doesn't matter what they call it. But watch this, which they name A00. We estimate the time to be, now this is one of the oldest lines, is impossible. But listen to what they say right here. We estimate the time to the most recent common ancestor. So right there, TMRCA, most recent common ancestor, for this line to be 3. Now listen to what I'm saying this. They're saying the most recent common ancestor to this line, meaning that it's not connected to him. It's not connected to Shem. It's not connected to Japheth, but it just shoots straight down. It's impossible. It's an impossible line. It's like a line that's put into people to identify them. Watch what it says here. It says it is 338,000 years ago. That's extremely, in fact, they say remarkable. This exceeds current estimates of the mtDNA. It says of the common recent ancestor, as well as those of the age of the oldest modern human fossils. This is what they're saying there. It's saying this DNA goes older than any fossil that they ever found. It's that, and understand, they got different fossils for the sake of understanding, but this is important to understand. When we take genetics, alive genetics like this, we're actually looking at something, when we actually put this on a graph, that's going to bring the understanding that this is impossible. What you're actually seeing is this is actually what's put there, and it actually painted the whole picture of the chromosome tree. The chromosome tree, you can thank the A00 for that. It says the extremely ancient age combined with the rarity. Now notice, if this A00 was for, if you're familiar with the so-called saying when it came out, they said, oh, all men are related to one man and one woman, and they'll tell you that they found the original Adam. This is what that line is. This is what that line is. And what's important about this lineage is that this very lineage actually isn't connected to anyone. It's actually like an impossible lineage when you actually break it down. Watch what it says right here. It says that it's rare and it's only found in those of E1B1A. It says, and with the rarity of the A00 lineage, which we also found at low frequencies in Central Africa, point to the importance of considering more complex models, because watch this, they're going to say that they need a more complex model, because it's going to change their whole design of the origin of the Y chromosome diversity. These models include ancient population structures and the possibility of, and just goes down a little bit. Let's talk about this right here. The A00 lineage was discovered in a, note this, large database of consumer samples of African Americans, quote unquote. It says, and has not been identified in, quote unquote, traditional hunter-gatherer populations from sub-Saharan Africa. What does he mean, traditional hunter-gatherer populations? He's talking about the A and the B lineages. So understand, Wikipedia, when it says that A00 is connected with A and all those things, as fossilized. And you're going to see that that's not true when you actually look at it on the chart. And they know it. They know it's not connected to anyone. That's why they say the most recent common ancestor is not A, but the most recent common ancestor goes all the way to the beginning of time, which is impossible. But watch what it says right here. It says, it was discovered, it says A00 lineage was discovered in a large database of consumer samples of African Americans and has not been identified in traditional hunter-gatherer populations of sub-Saharan Africa. This underscores how it just talks about the things of nature and everything and divides of humans. Let me show you something real fast. Let me show you another study on this. Because understand, this is not the first time, or this is not just one place that's looking at this. This is one of the most, when geneticists work on stuff, this is one of the most important genetic sites right here. This site right here, if you see something on this site, you know it's serious. This is right here. It's going to be nature. I'm going to go down. Actually, this one is going to be, I believe this is cell. Right here, cell is the more advanced, where most geneticists, anything here is super serious. So you can see this is cell right here. This is a serious genetic site right here. Close this. I'm going to show you what they say. Watch what they say on these things. Actually, I think I closed the wrong one. Let me close that and open it back up. All right. I want to show you this because what you're going to see here is you're going to see that many people know and who it comes from is important too. Is if this was, now understand when I say this, if this was from Adam, if this was supposedly from Adam, guess who you'll find it in? Every single person. If we had that as Adam's line, we would actually find that in every single person. And that's what they try to say it is. And you know why they actually say it like that? Because of the out of Africa idea, which was false. They try to say that out of Africa idea was real, but it's not true. A00 is not connected to the other lineages, and they know it. Watch what it says right here. So I'm gonna just read the title on here. An African potential lineage as an extremely ancient root to the human Y chromosome. Let's go down. I'm not gonna make it too confusing. Let's go down. Right here first. It says, we report the discovery of an African-American Y chromosome that carries the ancestral state of all snaps. This is actually how they made the tree. This is actually how they was able to make the tree. For the sake of understanding, few people notice they actually made the tree because they had all the snaps, every design, every single person that ever been created is in this Y chromosome, is what they're saying here. That defines the basal portion of the Y chromosome pedigenetic tree. For the sake of understanding, let me go down. So just for a summary, just to make it clear, basically the so-called Negro is not the same African, not the same as Africans. As Shem is not Ham, which is what they're saying here. They found it in one people, not anyone else. Now watch what it says right here. Ancient age combined with the rarity of A00 lineage, which we also find at the very low frequency in Central Africa, right? Because we can look at the maps and we see maps actually say that there were Africans in, right? That was they let you know that there were actually Jews in Africa, for the sake of understanding. Watch what it says right here. The A00 lineage was discovered in a large database of consumer samples of African Americans and has not been identified in traditional hunter-gatherer populations of sub-Saharan Africa. Remember how I showed you how they said they replaced the population in Africa? Nathan also talks about that for the sake of understanding. Right here, this is it. They call it A00. It has no connection to A0. It has no connection to A1 or A1A. It has no connection to these things. It has no connection. And I'm going to show you that on a chart, and they know it has no connection. It's found in this area. That's why it says Central Africa. Right here is found in this area. And guess what you also know? This is Cameroon, right? Where the Niger River, where they say, right? For the sake of understanding. Let's go down. Let me show you something. Here's an old map. This map was made in the 1700s. It just lets you know, according to Edwarsi, the land hereabout was peopled by Jews. Now, if you ever seen a map and you've seen the land of Kingdom of Judah or Beni or things like that, those were tribes. Those were actually tribes. There's an ancient map. There's a real map right here. It talks about the Kingdom of Judah. You can see it right there, the slave coast. It says Kingdom of Judah. And notice that Juda is actually used in one place in the Bible in Revelation, where it says, weep not, for the Lion of Judah has prevailed. And it writes it as Juda. You see what it's saying there? Juda. And it says, or Yehuda, slave coast, Yehuda. You see what's going on there? And I got a couple different maps that actually will show you this as well. Multiple different maps that were in the first in that time frame, around that time frame, that actually go over these things. And there's other historical evidence that bring these things together. But let's go back to here, because I'm not finished yet. I'm gonna show you something real fast. So remember, they found them and they know that they're linked to the people of the slave trade, right? You see what's going on there? It's almost like it's important to know what's that A00. What is that A00 doing there, right? Here's his idea of the A00. It's not connected to chimps. You see right there, they know it's not. It's not connected to chimps. It's a false narrative. And it's only connected, as you see this line right here, it's connected to who they call both of these, just understand that they're both African-American. Both of these are African-American. Only reason they put MOB because that one they found, and it was older. It was much older than the other ones. They found it brought it to another older branch. But notice this is the beginning of time. Remember how I told you they said 380,000 years ago is the common ancestor? That's important to note. That's important to note. The reason why is because it's not connected to your other lines. It's not connected to A00. We can see another one. Here it is, the novel branch, right, of the modern Y tree right there that actually painted the whole picture. You can see right there, it's disconnected from everyone else. It's not connected to everyone else. It has its own branch. So these are the other branches. This is its own branch up there. You can see right here, is just letting you know, previously known as haplogroup group A and haplogroup group B. It's not connected, nor does it bring forth haplogroup group A. It does not bring forth haplogroup group A, nor B, nor any other lineage. But it yet is found in an E1B1A people. You would think that's just a normal people, right? That E1B1A, that's just some normal people, but yet they have they're the only people where you can find this lineage of A00. How did they get there? How did that A00 get there only in these people? Watch what it says here. I'm going to show you something that's also very interesting here. In 2013, discovery of the previously unknown chromosome haplogroup dubbed A00, right, was announced. First found in Y chromosomes of an African-American male, right? He basically submitted some of his information, everything. And then they found it in what they call the MOB or MBO males right there. And then you can see right there a few of them out of 174 samples. You can see they found a small portion of it. Discovered in this division haplogroup group A00. You can see right there. And they'll say that it went all the way back. Just want to show you a little bit of history on that with these things. Now let's look at it again. You can see right here that's that MOB. It's just that it's older. That's why it says revised atom, because it's much older. And you can see that A00 is going to be found in them. And notice these are only in African American, and it says everyone else is over here. It's only found in this group, but everyone else is over here. Why is there a haplotype group that's found in one type of people and no one else? Here's their design idea. They're trying to put, they must have had some descendants. They must have a A000 and an A0000. Why not an A00000? But we obviously know that's a false narrative. They never found an A00. They never found an A0000. They never found any of those. They only found this one, which is that chromosome that's found in people. This is their idea trying to make sense of it. They can't. It's impossible. This lineage is not connected to anyone else. And you see this big this big part right here? This is why they say Africans, right? When they say Africans, A0 and B, whatnot, they'll say those are Africans and they say these are non-Africans. Obviously, for the sake of understanding and clarity, this is actually going to be your common branches of your haplogroup groups, but the A0 lineage is impossible, and it has every single snap in it. That basically means if you take if they was to use that haplogroup group to match with anyone, it would match with everyone. That's what it's saying. That's what it's saying. It would match with every single person, yet it's its own branch of its own line that is not found in anyone else. And it's like that. It's that ancient. You can never change it. You can never alter it. It's in you forever. It's something it's established forever. It's important to understand, and it can't be passed on. It's one of those things that's just there. It's just right there. Also, look right here. This is another idea of it. This is the beginning right up here. And it goes, this will be the branch of your average haplogroup group. So you can see A, B, all those leaning onto those and whatnot. But notice the A00, not connected, nor descending, not even giving any other lineage. It's only one lineage. and only one people that have this in them, and is a large portion of people that went into the slave trade. A lot of people that went into the slave trade are the individuals that I say, for the sake of understanding, based on the evidence here, that this is Aaron's line. This is Aaron's Y chromosome, because if you look at this Y chromosome, it reminds me of Aaron's staff. It reminds me of the time when Aaron took the rod and brought forth buds on it. For one person to have this haplogroup, understand this when I say this, it's impossible. It's impossible. It's genetically impossible, no matter the stretch of the imagination. It's impossible, because basically what it means is that they don't come from Ham. They don't come from Shem. They don't come from Japheth. They're a straight line created by God, and no one else is connected to them. And they're only found the people that was sent into every nation and fell by the edge of the sword. And these are the same individuals the Bible talks about as being Israel. These are the individuals that are actually going to be the real Israelites. These are the individuals that we need to recognize that have indeed fulfilled the prophecies that were written of old. These are the individuals that, as people believe, an ancient man, yet don't know it is a sign from the creator of DNA. This is the people that we see today called African Americans. But in the sense, I want to go back up, and I hope in all assurity today, out of any day, that brothers and sisters will take all other charts and will consider the charts that I'm showing here and make these and bring these to brothers. And this is the line of Israel. So with that, family, I hope that this presentation was something that was good for you. We just climbed a genetic tree, and I want you to know that I feel glad that we are able to see this type of information as I feel knowledge has increased. So I hope that this was a very, very important message for all people to see. So, brother Genesis 49ers, if you can let them know. Actually, well, I'll take, if anyone has any questions, I'll take some questions, and then we'll touch on those questions if anyone has any questions. But that was pretty much it. And this note, for the brother, this should be in the description. This should be something that you see there in the description for the sake of understanding. I don't know where he's at, that brother. I don't know if he's still here. Actually, I'll look.
What you need me to do, brother?
If anyone got any questions, I'll look at some questions real fast, and we'll end at the 2-hour mark.
All right, let me see. Let's see. I don't see too much. Somebody did have a question. I was interacting with someone. Let me go down. A brother said, GED said, are Mexicans and Native Americans Israelites or not, brother?
Okay, amen. That's a good question. So it all depends. It all depends on what haplogroup they are. If they are E1B1A, if they have any E1B1A in them, and remember, a little bit of E1B1A doesn't technically make you Israel. You want to have at least 50%, because a little bit of mix mean they mixed a little bit in, but a large percentage mean they were mainly Israel, even of the past. Necessarily, if we look at a tree, because this is what real geneticists, when a real geneticist look at their trees, this is what it looks like, and they know it. If we look at the tree, we got to look at what's that. Now, what you want to do is get a Y DNA test, and if you're any of these on the other side, right here, if you're, just remember this: A and B is going to be Hamites, A and B, except for A00. Except for A00, that's just named A00. It's not actually of the A lineage. Or D and E, I actually didn't show this yet, but D and E is actually going to be Japanese. Now, tomorrow, y'all willing, on my page, I'll go over this note again, and I'll go over the Japanese, as I didn't want to do that today, as the focus today was Israel. But tomorrow, I'll go over this whole note and go over the D and how that D is related with that, as the Japanese are Shemitic. Japanese people are actually Shem. They're actually sons of Shem. And different people like that, they're actually Shemitic. But if we actually look at some of the lineages of people, like for example, right here, anything after D and E is gonna be of Japheth. Now, C, if you're C, I don't know if you're Shem or if you're Japhetic, because no one knows. No one knows at all. Even Dr. Nathan Nadan, he tells us, Nathan Jensen, he tells us that we don't really know what C is. We know where C is today, but we don't know where it began. Most likely, it could be Japhetic. As you can see right there, that arrow, it might be Japhetic, but they don't 100% know. They don't 100% know. But if you're anything after E, if you're anything after E, then you're going to be in these lineages here, F, G, and it's just straight down to S, as you can see there. From anything from F to S is Japheth, and they know it. Anything from F to S is going to be of more what you say European, whether that be Q or R, J, K, I, F, G, H. Any of those are going to be your European. So once you get that information, you'll be able to tell. If you're D or E, you're going to be Shemitic. And if you're going to be A and B, it's going to be Hamitic. And obviously, that's having a large portion of A and B. The best way to do a DNA test, don't go to any other source of DNA tests but family tree DNA. If you want to get a direct and more clear understanding of your Y chromosome, go to family tree DNA. Go to family tree DNA to get a direct informative understanding on what Y chromosome you actually be from. So I guess the answer to that, it depends, right? If you're darker skinned Hispanic, most likely you could be. So just look at your genetics, but you can also have a light skin. You can have a light skin person that mixed with many females that were light skinned, right? Like if you mix with many Caucasians, but your father may have been originally an Israelite, and you mix with Caucasians a lot, your skin will show you to be light, but your DNA will show you to be Israeli. So it all depends on those things. So you can have those scenarios that can happen. It's very rare, right? Because we're talking later on. We're talking Israel after the time of the Second Temple. Then they will have to keep mixing with females and all that. But you'll still see a pure Y chromosome. You'll still see a mostly pure Y chromosome if it's like that. So I guess it'll depend on those things. It'll depend on those things. And remember, the ideas with the 12 tribes chart actually causes confusion because they're actually taking different Y chromosomes and mixing it together, but rather everyone's actually of the same father, so they're going to have the same Y chromosome. That's going to be that E lineage. So I guess that's for the question on that. And this will be our brother here. He'll put it in the description, so you can download this and keep it. And this is going to be a note with all those sources that you can have, and you can keep it. You can keep this thing. And if I find anything else, I'll add it on here, so you can keep this thing, and you'll see it. It'll grow if I find any extra information. But this is the lineage that they say that the 12 tribes came from. As you see, if you're from one of those branches, right? If you're from one of these 12 tribe branches that they say 12 chromosome subgroups were observed. If you're from one of those 12, then you're of the 12 tribe, right? You're from one of the 4 mothers of the 12 tribe. You're definitely going to be of Israel if you have E1, B1A. But if you're not, then, as is, even in the sense of understanding, stay with Christ. Christ is the way. He's the way to salvation. Yeah.
So if anybody have any questions, pose them now. Or saying any comments, let the brother know what was going on. That really pretty much was the only question that I see so far.
I see one on any info on DNA.
Oh yeah, I seen that one just pop up. Yeah.
If that's, I want to make sure I'm looking at the right one. E1A is. I'm thinking that's going to be right here. You're talking about E1A right here. Now this one, most likely, we actually have to notice that this is going to be a descendant from. Obviously, it's going to be closer to Shem. Right, Shem bringing forth his lineages later on, Eber and all those things, and they having their families and whatnot. And then you're gonna have brothers. Remember, he also had the children of Lot. This could be the children of Lot. This could be easily the children of Lot, without a doubt. This could be easily the children of Lot, without a doubt. It could be Ammon and Moab. without a doubt. But also it's important to know that D could be Ammon and Moab. The lineage of D could be Ammon and Moab, without a doubt. So this one, well, I'll look into and maybe put this on here in a note at the bottom. Maybe I'll look into see who are these and what they are linked with. Because remember, every people's, when you connect their DNA, you also want to connect their history. And you take the actual historical quotes, what's known of them in history, link those together with the DNA, and you got a more of a clear picture on who they are. So that's always important. So I'll look into that. E1A is definitely going to be a different one.
Hold on, brother. I think somebody got some smoke for you in the comments section. And maybe they new to the channel. They said the Japanese are not from Shem, brother.
Amen. So let's go over that. I'm glad he said that. So I actually got some information here. We'll go over that information right now. Let's take a look at who are the Japanese. So not only do I say this, but Nathaniel also says this, and many other geneticists actually say this indeed, because it's actually proven in them. But let's go over this as if we haven't seen it yet. So let me go over this information thoroughly with you. Let's go to that right here.
Let's get it. Let's go. Teach them, brother.
So here's a sub branch. This is how we can single-handedly know that the D lineage is connected to the E lineage. DE stems off and it makes D and E. See right there? From the DE lineage comes D and E. That's how they know they were connected in the beginning. Now, let's actually look at this right here. So I'm gonna show this video, 1441. This is a great brother, 1441. Right here.
Shows his Hebrew.
Let me show you what he says a little bit here. Now, this is going to be the Niger Jews.
To the European masses, Simeon was surnamed Niger because he was black. What we are really going to find out is that Simeon was called Niger or nigger because he was from the Niger River, the same place you and your ancestors were picked up from. Yes.
I'll come back to this. I'm gonna leave that alone real fast, but I'm gonna go to this for the direct understanding.
Yeah, I'm about to say, brother, get to it, because what that brother just said was his chronologically incorrect. There was no Niger River or Niger during that time. I just wanted to point that out.
Okay, we'll talk. Okay, then we'll talk about that one too. Then, so this right here is going to be some ancient peoples. These are going to be some ancient peoples that have the D chromosome. These are going to have the D chromosome, and then we're going to look at some a little more deeper into it. We're going to look a little more deeper into it. So first, I want to show you what those people look like. It's an idea of what they look like. Get an idea of them. We're going to touch on the DNA of these individuals. We're going to get on the DNA of these individuals that you see here. So this is a certain group. Look at their hair. See what's going on there. They're just going through it. So some different things. Now I'm going to go back here, and because we want to get the meat of the product. Let's go here. Therefore, D is the line of Shem. Now this one, if I recall, this one right here goes over the history of the Asians and everything. This is a longer video. It's 15 minutes long, but they go over the whole history of how the Asians got there and a couple things with them. I don't know if he's ready to sit here 15 minutes and see that with me, but let me go to a summary right down here. All right, so this is what it says about the D branch. It says the D branch near the DE split, the authors consider several possibilities, including, they say, forget about the origin, don't worry about that. It says deep rooting of haplogroup group D0, as well as recent calculated early the vintage times for it and its parent haplogroup group DE, and it's just talking about some things, how it's connected. It's just letting you know that D is connected with E. Just understand it's extra confirmation, letting you know D is connected with E. I can also show you Nathan on that as well. But let's actually go to some deeper history. And now this right here talks about the migration. I don't believe in the out of Africa idea, but they do know that D came from E. Now notice that is actually, we know that D actually ends in Japan. You can see it's in, in Japan, and it actually is in Indians, is in different islanders. We see the D in
It's
many.
in the Chiang people in China.
That's right. That's right. And so, not to get confused with some of the Chinese, there's different types of Chinese that are actually Japhetic. But now let me show you what happened here. I'm gonna show you now something here. In fact,
Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Nathaniel Jensen.
this is just talking about the Chinese connection to Europe. I'm not gonna show that one right now. Let me go right here. Let me show now a little bit of. I'm gonna show a video here. Let me see, where is it? Right. Let me see if it's this one. Actually, no. That one's that long video. That's that long historical informative video.
If I may, I do got a source that touches right on it. If you don't mind, brother.
Oh, hey man, I'll go to that one after this one. This guy, he just also compares linguistic information. Linguistic is a study of languages and different and cultures and how certain things that are found there. As you can see, he also shows the finds right here.
Some West Africans actually do have Asiatic features. I've just always found it strange how so many of these heads consistently display these Asiatic characteristics, such as wide faces, high cheek.
He's just right here. He's just talking about these different things that's found in Japanese. So you can see how they look the same. He says he shows how these people look very similar right here. Let me show this right here. So now this is a direct genetic information. This is now it may seem a little blurred, but let me show you real fast here. Looking for the roots of the Japanese. I'm gonna skip a little ahead. Now, I'm gonna read it because it's in Japanese and everything. And right here, it just talks about pretty much they're basically the verse. They talk about the Mongoloids. I'm gonna skip a little ahead. This talks about how they got there, how they got to Japan. Talk about the migrations and everything. I'm gonna skip a little ahead right here. And it just talks about the DNA, talks about the things about the DNA. It talks about how it's mixed. You see how it's mixed? That's why they're light like that. They wasn't originally, the way they look today is not how they originally looked. That's how their DNA looks. It's all mixed. That's actually a mixture. It says a mixture of many ethnicities. And right there, it just talks about that unique one. That would be that D lineage.
Yeah. I'm glad. Pause that, man. You got to touch on that. That 40% of Japanese are haplogroup D.
Yep, right there.
Yeah.
On that part right there, what you just seen, right here. This talks about the mixture and everything, and then it talks about the mix, right? That 40% and whatnot. I just want to go to a different because this one's Japanese, and that's more connecting with the long history, that 15-minute video with a history to it, because the history also is in connection with it. But let me show you this. Here's the people. These are the ones that have that D lineage. I'm gonna show you what they look like. Both of these have it. Both of these have the D lineage. Both of these groups. I'm gonna turn it up a little bit. Maybe they take English. Nope. Turn that down. So you can see right here, it's just talking about that 38% is the lineage that has the D in it. And they say the Anu people are connected to these ones. What's that? Andaman right there.
The Andaman Islanders and the Tibeto-Turban people.
Yep, you know them. Yep. These are the D lineage. They're connected. These are the same genetics. These have the same D lineage. They're connected. These are Shemitic people. And it's without a doubt that they're connected because they know that they have that D lineage. They have the D line. So you can see what they look like. Very similar facial features. Same genetics, meaning they came from the same source. They're going to be the same peoples for sake of understanding. Those are the original Japanese. What you're seeing there is the original Japanese. You can see what's going on. Obviously, a darker skin wasn't as desired as light skin. So you can see how the media went with that, how everything went with that. You can see the people, the Anu, right? So again, some visual understandings on them. They're going to have that D chromosome there. But brother Genesis, if you want to, you can show your video if you want on that for that clarity, for that final piece of clarity.
Yeah, I got some literature. I want to say this. We got to stop making monoliths, and I think the brother made a monolithic statement by saying the Japanese are Japhet, because he said that's what he's going into. We understand. I understand from my studies that you do have a mixture, like you said, it's a mixture of people.
Exactly.
So you do have haplogroup O, which would be Japhet, over there. But what Lionform was pointing out is the D lineage, which
That's
has
right.
ancient presence in Japan, and up to 40% of Japanese carry it. He gave you a group, the Ainu people, that have it. So we can see clearly that they have a lineage that's related to a lot of African Americans because they come from DE like we come from DE. So let me pull this source. Let me share my screen real quick, man. I'm gonna give it right back to you.
Go ahead. You can see right there. You can look it up yourself. Habakkuk Group D, and it can tell you who is in and whatnot. Tells you Japanese and whatnot right there.
Yeah, man. The brother wanted to smoke with you, man, when you said that.
Yeah. So there it is. Clarification in the Anu. We just looked up the Anu. You can see right there. Habakkuk Group D, right there. It has been found in the Anu. See right there. 87% in the Anu males. You can see who is found there. Habakkuk Group of the Japanese. So born in Japan. So that's the information right there is in the Japanese people. So you can see Habakkuk Group D, which is connected to E. So they're Shemitic. They're Shemitic. They are Shemitic. These are Shems. These are Shemites. So when you think of those Japanese and they are rocking with the animes, they're actually Shem. So they could be Moab and Ammonites. Who knows? I can't tell you.
Yeah, it could be. That very well could be. What I like about digging into DNA, digging into ancestry, seeing how far our ancestry goes and how great our people are. I just got to say it. Our people, if y'all played that, what's that game that came out on PlayStation 4, Ghost of Tsushima? You know what I'm saying? You could say that your lineage is connected to that because we are all from DE.
Yep.
The Europeans do it. They connect themselves to everything European and everything that they claim Nordic. They claim Vikings. They claim everything. Why can't we claim our ancestry and our legacy too? So that's one side of it I just wanted to present. I don't know why some people have an issue with that, but let me read this right here. This is the book Language and Genes in Northwestern China and Adjacent Regions by Dan Xu.
You gonna show your screen? My bad.
You can see it, right?
No, I can't see your screen.
Oh wait, that your screen? Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I never added it. I didn't add it. There, it's on there.
Okay, now I can see it.
All right, so let's deal with the question again. He said they are not Shem, but they carry our DNA, and you're claiming that we're Shem. So that would make them Shem as well, because we all come from the parahaplogroup DE. So genetic legacy of the Paleolithic period. It says the migration history of haplogroup DM174 is most mysterious. By time we have known little about the origin and dispersal of this haplogroup. This haplogroup was derived from an African haplogroup DEM1.
There it is.
This is our ancestor. These are our ancestors that this haplogroup derives from.
That's right. It just so happens to be a different type of Shemite, different branch, but it is Shem.
Exactly. And it's associated with a short black Asian physical style. Haplogroups END are brother haplogroups. Let me read that again. Maybe the brother maybe he didn't catch it at first. Haplogroups E and D are brother haplogroups. While haplogroup E was carried westward to Africa by tall black people, haplogroup D might have carried eastward to East Asia by short black people. Haplogroup D M174 has high frequencies in the Andaman Negritos, the northern Tibeto-Burman populations, and the Ainu of Japan.
That's right.
It also appears at low frequencies to other East and Southeast Asian and Central Asian populations. A northern Tibeto-Burman population, the Bima D comprises nearly 100% of haplogroup E. This is in Tibet.
Yep.
There are three main subclades of haplogroup D, i.e. D1M15, D2M55, and D3P99, and many unclassified minor subhaplogroups. Haplogroup D1M15 is prevalent in the Tibetans, the Tangu Chiang, and Lolo, and also found at very low frequencies among the mainland East Asian populations. Haplogroup D2M55 is restricted to various populations of the Japanese archipelago.
There it is.
Come on, man. Haplogroup D3P99 is found at high frequencies among the Tibetans and several Tibeto-Burman minorities in Sichuan and Yunnan provinces that reside in the close proximities to the Tibetans, such as Pumi and Nakshi. The paragroup D is restricted to the Andaman Islanders, which has been isolated for at least 20,000 years. Some other minor haplogroups, also included D, can be found around Tibet. Most of the populations of haplogroup D have a very dark skin color, including the Andamese, some of the Tibeto-Burman, and the Mon Khmer people. The Ainu people may have changed the pale skin, to absorb more ultraviolet light in high latitude regions.
There it is.
Go ahead, brother. Go ahead. You got it.
So I wanted to touch on just that statement from Yahshua born 1991. If you born 1991, I'm born 1991 too. But I wanted to address E1A. If we look at E1A, there is no evidence at all historically that E1A are actually of the line of the Ishmaelites. They're not the Arabs. We actually find great evidence for the Arabs being E1B1B. Extreme evidence, obvious, deep evidence, large portions of evidence of E1B1B for the sake of understanding. But E1B1A, because I did see, like I said, I heard that some of the Facebook ideas where they try to make Abraham E1B1A, but that also causes great problems. If Abraham was if Abraham was E1A, then there's a gap. They actually put a gap in the genetics because of the change and the updated chart of the E1B1A. It's important to understand it. That's why he can't be E1. He can't be E1A. He's not E1A. It's impossible for him to be E1A. Abraham's not E1A. We won't end up getting the 12 tribes. We won't get the 12 tribes by the time we get to Jacob. We just won't. If you keep on going from E1A, you're going to have too much space to Jacob. You have too much space for the sake of understanding. But we do have a clear understanding when we actually put him as E1B1 for the sake of understanding. If he's E1B1 P2, then it does fit. But E1A doesn't fit. Well, E1B for the sake of understanding. Making Abraham E1B doesn't fit. And then making Ishmael E1A doesn't fit. Because it's multiple problems with that. Multiple large problems with that. Extreme problems that you can find with that for the sake of understanding. But if I may, I just want to touch on that real fast because I will touch on the Facebook idea. I'll touch on that where it is spreading where they're trying to say, I'm going to show that design where they say E1B1A is Israel. Let me just pull up that Facebook one that person has right here. This is that classic design, right? Many people seen that classic design. You can see, okay. So you seen this design, right? Let's actually look at it, and I'll tell you, we'll look at it and see how it's wrong. Let's just start at E1B1 or E1B. Let's start at E1B. Obviously, what's the problem with this already? You need 12 tribes from Ishmael. You need 12, and there's no 12 tribes that come from E1A. There's no 12 tribes, but there's 12 tribes that come from E1B1B. There's 12 tribes from E1B1B. But there's no 12 tribes, and there's 12 tribes from E1B1A. That's 12 original branches in both of these. These are two splits and 12 different branches in both of them, right? Because remember, it said about Ishmael, he had 12 as well. And you can see right here, they try to say Esau. But let's start at E1. Let's see if we're going to get this. And remember, this is older. Whoever this is, he's a doctor or whatever. But you can see right here, I'm going to show you something real fast. Let's go to it. Let's say we made Abraham this. What's the problem? These are brothers. This is not his son. That's important to understand. This what he already did right there is that is not his son. That is not his son already. You already got a problem there. That's not underneath him, bringing forth him, right? And if he made him E1, right? Because right here you can see you make him E1, Abraham E1. Let's make him E1. So let's make him E1. What's the problem there? Watch what happens here. Let's say this was Abraham. He's all the way back here, right? Abraham all the way back here. Who does he have? He has one of the sons. This is not enough to bring forth Ishmael, right? This not E1 is not enough to bring forth Ishmael. But let's say this was Isaac. Okay, Isaac brought forth right here, who is going to supposedly be Jacob. Now, what's the problem? There's a gap. There's two gaps. There's a gap here. There's a gap right here and here. There's a gap here. So if this was Abraham, let's say this was Abraham, and this was Isaac, and this was Jacob, there's a gap right here and here. There's a gap there. Because actually, when they found A00, they know this is actually how it's formed. They know this is actually how it's formed. And there's 12 branches that descend off of here, from A right here. That's going to descend from M2. From M2 right here, from M2 is where you're going to branch off those other ones. That's where it's going to descend from. But if we start up here, we got a problem. We have a problem. The problem is we're not going to have history matching with A1. Because these individuals, we can look up E1A, we can look up E1A, and we don't have them being the Ishmaelites. They're not the Ishmaelites. It's a group that's just basically sat there. We don't know exactly who these are. They were some Shemites. But they're definitely not the Ishmaelites. We know that for a fact because we can connect them with history. And their history doesn't match that they're the Ishmaelites. They never was, and it's important to understand, we can connect to who was in Arabia, who was those Ishmaelites. We can connect their 12 tribes, and it fits perfectly with the illustration of who they are, and even the connection with the Turks, because that's when the Ottomans came by to do what they did. But now let's look at this. So E1, right? They say that that's Abraham, right? They say that this is Isaac, and Isaac brought forth obviously Abraham. They say this is Ishmael, right? They say this is Isaac, right? And then they say Isaac brought forth obviously Jacob. Jacob doesn't have 12 sons. Jacob doesn't have 12 sons right here. That's the problem. It doesn't even have 12 sons at V38. There's no 12 sons at V38. But there are 12 sons at M2. There's a confirmation, and they have 4 mothers, 4 main mothers in this line that actually started the line. 4 mothers, 12 tribes. That's what the geneticists say. There are 12 major groups from here, and there are 4 mothers that are part of this bringing forth, not here or here. You see what's going on there? So it doesn't work out at all. It doesn't work out at all, not in any sense of the stretch of imagination. So that's actually a false idea. This is actually false, then no one's going to take it seriously. If we keep spreading this idea, many geneticists are going to laugh and mock it. They're going to know that this makes no sense in any stretch of the imagination. They're going to be extremely it's just going to be a great disappointment trying to bring this to pass. This is not actually the real lineage. We don't even see anything like this. This design is not even seen. But we see this design if we make this actually E1A. If we make him E1A, then it works. And then he can be E1B1A. And then the next one can be E1B1A1, which is M2. That's important to understand. That's actually, and remember, they found the A00 that confirms this whole map. It mapped out every single person's final result. They don't need to update it anymore because they got the A00. All the haplogroup groups you see now, they're not going to change. They know what they have now because the A00 had everyone. A00 mapped it out. A00 was like a map. That's what A00 was. It brought forth the whole map, and this design wouldn't work. So again, one more time, you see how right here it says that Abraham is E1, right? Let's say Abraham was E1. The problem is we can't connect history with this E1B1 or this E1A. We can't connect history with them being any type of Ishmaelites. We can't connect that in history. Right here, E1 also has E1B. That's going to be where you're going to actually see E1B. It's going to bring forth E1B1. E1B1 is going to also bring forth E1B1A. Now the problem is E1B1A, as you see right here, this is actually going to be the problem is that E1B1A has a gap in the middle, 2 gaps in the middle. Well, in the sense, 1 gap. Let's actually say 1 gap in the middle. So I don't know why I count this as a different, because this is the same. For clarity's sake, these two are the same. E1B1A, V38, these are the same for the sake of understanding, for clarity. You can see there's actually a gap because M2. Let me show you on another one for a little more clarity on this as well. I think that this one is a little more clear. So I'm gonna click this, as I believe this is gonna give a clear understanding of what I'm saying here, right? Obviously, you got a lineage before this. Maybe let me see if I got one with a farther, I believe I have one with a more further reach. I believe so. Oh, right there. Okay, so this E1 right here, let's say Abraham was E1. Now, here's the problem. If Abraham wasn't right here, he was E1, you would have a lineage of people that you barely see in the world do anything, right? They're kind of like off doing their own thing. You don't have a large historical evidence with, but you do have a large history with E1B1B, with Ishmael. And you see a large split in between the two groups. As you can see, if we go down to a little visual understanding right here, you can see those 2 groups. And there's 12 tribes in these 2 groups. So there's E1B1B and E1B1A. And these are going to be connected in history being Arabs, right here. So you can see these group, and almost every Arab has E1B1B in it, right? Except for those that's mixed with the Turks. A lot of them, they are actually going to be pure Turks, a lot of them. Some of them are actually going to be mixed with that E-clad. And you can see that if you ever look it up. You can see that a lot of people will be mixed with that. But let me click here, and let's look at this real fast so we can get a clear understanding on what went wrong with that design. What was the problem with that design? One, most likely they made it too early. They made that design early when it was all in its experimental stage. It wasn't ready yet for that design to be made. So they basically made it way too early. So they worked with what they got. Now, I don't think the person's a liar. I think that they didn't have enough information to make the design at that time. I don't think enough information was there for them to have that design, because that design is actually going to be not correct. Now, watch what it says right here. I'm gonna show you something. So Abraham, let's say Abraham was right here, right? He's gonna bring forth a people that have no history. That's what's gonna be the problem. And try to say that Ishmael is gonna be a problem. To try to say they got 12 sons from there, gonna be a problem as well. And then you're gonna say that this is gonna be, right, from him, you're gonna say that this will be Isaac. Now, if Isaac is gonna bring forth what? And that's why they say this was Ishmael, right? They say this was Ishmael, and they're gonna say that this was Israel. Now, the problem with that is that, one, this being Ishmael, this actually will connect with a lot of Arabic history. And we got to remember, though Ishmael mixed in with the, though Ishmael, for the sake of, or Esau, for the sake of understanding, bring forth Esau, though Esau did have mingling with different peoples, he didn't bring forth 12 groups, nor is his history confirmed as being Arabian, because remember, his male lineage is not going to change. His male Y chromosome is not going to change, even if he mixed with women of Ishmael. It's important to understand that. Now, we also got a problem over here. If this is this is Abraham, and this is Isaac, and this is Jacob, this is M2. This is M2 right here. The problem with that is that M2 is going to break off to 12 branches. This is one branch that breaks off to 12 branches. And there's another lineage that's from here that's going to be a separate branch, though it's of the branch. Then we got to ask, what is this separate branch that's of the branch, that's its own branch, that is a private branch? But these branches are actually going to go and make 12 branches from here. This is a space between here. There's a space in between here. Let's look at it a little more detailed right here on the correct one. Let's look at a little more detailed right here, right? M2 right there is going to split off. Now note that M2. Actually, let's go to a more detailed one up here. Let's note that M2. I'm gonna go up here, and we can actually do it. We can open it ourselves if we want to. And actually, matter of fact, I'm gonna open up a family tree branch thing so you can see it also as I open it. Let me actually show you that on a family tree so you can see it being open right here. I have 2 of them right here. So this is one. I'm going to go to E right here. And this just talks about E, but I want to show you one where it actually brings them out piece by piece. So I'm going to show you this one, because this one's going to bring it out piece by piece. So this is, again, family tree DNA, more focused on the Y chromosome. With that A00, this family tree would not change. It would not change because that A00 confirms all peoples that ever existed, which is impossible, but yet it's there. Let's start this out. So we're going to branch off. Go down a little bit. Right? All right. And make sure I got the right one. The only thing with this is making sure these ones are what they are. So let me actually see what these codes are, just to remind myself real fast. Looking at that Y chromosome of Abraham, right here. Just looking at these numbers, V38, M2. Sometimes they word them a little different because after this one, in fact, let me just make sure I'm not clicking. Actually, 47, that might be where I want to go. Yep, 47. Okay, 47, this is what I want to look at. I want it to branch out. I'm going to branch it out like this. So 47, next going to be, I'm going to see if it's 177. So that's what we want to do. So let's actually put these back so it's clear. Okay, so this is how it breaks off. And then next is going to be 147. And then 177. And now this is going to be your 2 branches. Let's go right here. Actually, let's go to this one right here. So it's going to be your E-clad. So now we have 77, right? The next is going to be 79, right? Well, in a sense, after right here, because this is going to be going from here. And then you're going to have your M2. Now, this is all I wanted to see, to be honest with you. M2. I want you to see M2 because that's where we're going to break off at, right? M2 right there. That's going to be Jacob. Now, remember, they're trying to say they're further back, but here's M2. Now, watch what happens at M2. Watch what happens at M2. If we open M2, we can see it's going to have different branches. And in fact, it's going to have these branches. These branches are actually going to be basically 12 branches. I don't know exactly what are the 12 branches, but you can see it's going to break off to its own branches and everything over here. So you can see that. And just for the clarity, that's where you're going to get the 12 from. And that's what they tell you, that from this line here, you're going to get 12 from this M2. From M2, you're going to get 12 that's going to come out. But you don't get 12 from E1B1A, but you get 12 from M2 or E1B1A1. So it's just important to note it like this, right? Just note it like this. This is already out. Watch what it says right here, right? If we obviously start here, if we have this one, and this one, we got a problem, right? If we say this one, and this one, we have a problem. We got a problem, right? We're gonna have an in between right there. Have a problem, right? E1, E1B, E1B1, right? And then E1B1A, and then M2. But if we start at E1B and then make it E1A and then make it M2, then we get the 12. These are the 12 right here. For the sake of it, maybe these are even the original 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Probably don't have the original 12 on this one, but there are 12 major branches that branch off from this. This is just like a summary branch because this little tree, if you ever try to bring this out, it'll take you an hour. It'll take you an hour just to bring this tree out on one side. It's very large, extremely large, but they know that there's 12 original ones. There's 12 original ones. I just want to see if it was on this thing because I don't know exactly which ones they are, but there are 12 branches of Israel that come off from E1B1A, which are noted by the geneticists for the sake of understanding. So you see, we can't start at E1. We can't start at E1 because we're not going to ever get that understanding. You're not going to get the understanding. It's hermetic and it's fulfilling on many different levels. If we make them E1, B1, if we make them E1, B1, then we can get Ishmael. We can get Ishmael and the history that matches with Ishmael, right? Now, I didn't go over Ishmael just to confirm that this is Ishmael for the sake of understanding. But if you want to, on Lion Farm, I do a 4-hour video. Yes, a 4-hour video because you got to look at the history. You got to look at the history, the linguistics, and the genetics to actually confirm that this is Ishmael. Otherwise, I can quickly summarize and show you that it's Ishmael in less than a minute for the sake of understanding, because we can actually look at the information ourselves and confirm it ourselves. For example, I just want to show you how we know this is actually Ishmael. I don't mean to click that one right here. I'm going to click this, and I'm going to show you that this is indeed Ishmael. I'm going to go down. One, they're the only other people that have a pure lineage. They have pure lines in them. They have pure lineages, yet there's a lot of them. There's a lot of them. In fact, 12 branches, for sake of understanding. We have history that they were the Moors. They were the same ones that came from Arabia. They actually went into an area and they called it Africa. The Moors were actually the Arabians. They were darker skinned, and we know where they are because we can track their DNA. And the ones who went into Spain, they can look at the information and see those are the ones that went into Spain and everything. We can look at the history of quotes with Flavius Josephus and other quotes that are going on right there. You can actually even look at the people. You can look at the people that were in the area that was in Saudi Arabia. All these have E1B1B. These have E1B1B in a large portion. These are going to be those Arabians, the ones that were in that area, the ones that would be with the Arab. And they actually are the ones that also deal with the Turks. Remember, the Arabs were dealing with the Turks. It's important to understand that history. When the Turks came in, that history is without a doubt known. Also different levels of it for sake of understanding. We can see the genetics. We can see the separation there, the 12 tribes of Ishmael, right? And then we see the 12 tribes of Israel over here. It's very important to understand that that's what we actually see in a large portion in these things of going on in these areas. Also linking with as you see right here, this is actually the Ottoman Empire that came in and merged with a lot of them. And their genetics, you can find it in a lot of different ones of them. You can see it in them. So that's that, and that's who they are. They are actually going to be the Arabs. If you want to see a more clear and more deeper study on these things, I actually go over that on Lion Farm, and I'll just show you quickly what it looks like, what that video looks like, just for the sake of understanding. On Lion Farm, I actually have a summary of that right here. So on Lion Farm, I go over a lot of genetic information, a lot of things like that. I debunk the out of Africa theory. I'm making an animation of the Bible with the Y chromosome. So as the people move, you can see the Y chromosome is really interesting. If you want to get a chance to see that and help me out with that as I'm working on it live so everyone can see that all the information is identical with what people know. And you can, right here is the study, right? There's, what's his name, Diddy, or whatever his name is. And you can see that he's actually E1B1B because he's a Somali. Right there, they are the Ishmaelites. This is what, and it's actually have a playlist right here where I actually go over these things, Synthetic Sunday, and I go over a lot of historic and genetic things. I also go over prophecy and different things like that. But obviously, this is my second page right here. My main page is actually going to be a different page for the sake of understanding. For clarity, I actually have a different page, which is going to be actually right here. But that one I never went. I just basically start recently going over genetics for the sake of understanding, as I did look into the things that people were bringing out, but it didn't make sense. I'll be honest with you. The previous design, like I showed you, that it makes sense. So that's why I had to go about it myself. This is my other page of going over prophecy. This is just prophecy and everything. I go over the Ashkenazi idea and stuff like that, and looking over those things, and we confirmed that that's obviously the Ashkenazi idea is false. Ashkenazi aren't the Judeans. It's impossible. It's more impossible for them to be the Judeans. There's no genetic evidence at all, even of a 12 group, nothing in their Y chromosome. None of it makes sense. None of it makes sense at all. It's the most mumble jumble mess of anything for the sake of understanding. To even go into it, to even for people to even say that they're Ashkenazi is just crazy. Looking at the genetics. But this is that note right here that goes over that. So on Lion Farm, I go over that. It's 4 hours because it's 2 notes. This is one part. This is part 2. But there's another part that I actually go over. I actually don't know what's on that, but it's another note. And the notes are in the description of that video. The notes will be in the description of the video. I'll go over the historical information, the actual origin of the name, the origin of the name. I go over Ishmael. I go over the origin, what happened with Ishmael and where he went and different things like that. And I talk about the Moors, that Moor actually means Arabian, or it can mean someone of dark skin, but usually for someone who's the Arab stock. That the Moors were Arabs. I go over where is Arab, what is an Arab, and what about the Turkification that happened in that time, and how we know that they're the people, because that's how you know who peoples are. Usually when you see genetics mingling together, these 2 different types of genetics, that's usually a reason why these groups are mingling, because they were actually pushed down more into Africa. The people, original people of Arabia was pushed out of Africa because it was dominated by the Turkish peoples. It's important to understand with that thing. We can even look at a lot of peoples, the Arabs, we can see their genetics. Either they have they either have a high J, that's either what they have, either a high J or they have a high E. This is a list. You can look here, here's a J, and here's the E, E1B, 1B. Either they always have a high J, like this one got a high J, right? Or if they have a low J, they got a high E. You can see right here a high E, and these are the Arabs, high E, 1B, 1B. You can see right here low J, high E, low E, high J. You can see right there is they're always, because they're mixing. You can see low E, high J right there is always like that, because that J is the Turkish when the Turks came in there and started merging with them. We can see that with a lot of the Arabs in that area. A lot of Arabs have that mixing going on there. You can see what's going on here. Right? So either they're going to have a low E and a high J right there, high J, low E, right? Or they're going to have a high E, like the 62E right here, and a low J. You can see right there, they always get a mixture of a low and high trade. So low E, high J, usually nothing else. Sometimes a rare R in there. You can see right here. So for some that's mixing, like the Armenians right here, they're going to have a high E, different things like that. But they're not going to have you can see a large J in a lot of them, but they're not going to have a lot of other stuff. But they mix with some of the Europeans, because that's going to be the Armenians, more mixed with your Caucasus Mountains, more mixed with the Caucasus over there. So you're going to see a lot of J's and E's in them. So some pure J, right? These are your Turks, right? Your Dargans. These are your real Turks, right? You can obviously look at them and tell that they're Turks. As you can see, well, this obviously don't have a picture here, which it should have. Actually, I think right there, I'll just copy, just show you these people, what they look like. They look like Russians, pretty much. In a way, they look like Russians. This is what they look like. Obviously, these are Turks. These are Turks right here, J lineage. These are your Turks, right? Those are going to be your Turks. But let's look at a high J. Let's look at a people with a high E, right? That was a high J. I'm going to go to a people with a high E, right? What does a high E look more towards? Here's one up here. Now be careful of the so-called Samaritans. Be careful of those DNA tests are corrupted. Those DNA tests are corrupted. It's false. If they try to tell you that someone with 100% E and another one who's a Samaritan with 100% J, it's false. Be careful of their false tests. A lot of that is false. Be careful of those things for the sake of understanding. But let's click this one. This one has a higher, I don't know if it'll give me the direct people, to be honest with you, because some of them have a high E. I'll just show you an example of someone with a high E. Somali, right? You just put Somali people. They have a high E. These ones have a high E, and you can see right here, these are actually the real Ishmaelites. These are the real Ishmaelites, the original ones. And you can see where a lot of them are at. Right there, the Arabia Felix. Remember, they left the Arabia Felix and they went into here. That's actually what happened. A lot of them, either they got a high J or they got a high E. These are real Ishmaelites. These are the real Ishmaelites. You can see they got a distinct look, right? They have a very distinct look. You can see they almost look like the classic African American, but they have their own look. They have their own look, very distinct look. And there's 12 tribes of them. There's 12 different groups, 12 different branches that they come from. And remember, that said about Ishmael. And we see that that is evidence of the Ottoman Empire's effects on the land. J is going to be from the Turks. E1B1B is from Ishmael. I mean, not Ishmael. Yeah, Ishmael, for the sake of understanding. So you can see that just for a clear understanding on those things. Here's another idea. Got the higher ones over here, just seeing some of those. Another idea of it. And you can see just some branches, right? This one is more R1A. This is just R1A, just talking about Turks and everything. And their lineage is actually going to be J. And sometimes you see that R in there, which is going to be more your European and stuff like that. We also find that in different peoples, but that's just obviously for the sake of understanding different levels of things, different levels for the sake of understanding. But that's what I found. If you see that 4-hour video, you'll see also the historical evidence, the linguistic evidence, the genetic evidence all together at once. And it's going to confirm to you that indeed, without a doubt, the Moors were Arabs. The Moors were Arabs, and we know where the Moors were at, and they were the same people for the sake of understanding. And we know that because they said it in Spain. They said they were kicking out the Moors, who were the Arabs and all that stuff. These are going to be your high E. That's your high E over there, right in this area. That was in this area, and they were kicked out. That was when the Islamic conquest was mostly pure. But then, obviously, being kicked out, they stay in these areas. These are going to be your real Ishmaelites. So that obviously this doesn't work out. This design, it brings confusion to history. It's not right. It's just understand it's not right at all. We got a lineage that does tell you that that Israel came from 4 mothers, and it's another lineage that tells you there's 12 originators from there. And that's what you see. You see exactly this in the genetics. You see 10 tribes, right? Just like how we've seen at the right stopping point. You got to stop at the right point, right? You got to stop at the right point, not here, but here. This is the last son, and then the 12 comes from him. That's important to know. And that's what we just confirmed when we actually went over the information, right? As we just seen, one more time right here, you can see, remember how I said the X can change the Y chromosome and everything? And we can see, I'm gonna just read this one. We can see right here, we get exactly this map, this exact map. Maybe I'll put the numbers on them, just on that. But let me show you right here. Let me actually go up a little bit and click this. Let this load in real fast. And then I'm gonna show you that they're from M2, even from the E1B1, from the E1B1 group, for the sake of understanding. It lets us know of the possible 17 haplogroup groups, 12 were observed in complete data set with haplogroup group E1B1A model. So 12 groups in the E1B1A model, 12 groups in the E1B1A model is what it's saying there. You can see right here, it talks about those 12 groups. So 12 Y chromosome subgroups were observed. Most of the individuals belong to the 4 sub-haplogroups. That means these 4 branches that branches out from those 4, bringing forth the 12 tribes of 4 mothers, right? 4 mothers. That's actually going to bring that. And that's why those change. That's why the Y chromosome changes, because of the X chromosome. A recombination only on the ends of the Y chromosome, but 95% of the Y chromosome remains the same. And remember, it hasn't changed for 2,000 years. It stayed the same. So it's not like another mother can come in and change anything. So we see the exact design, right? From the M2, from Jacob, we get 4 mothers, the four main branches, and then we get 12 tribes from them in total. We get 12 tribes from them in total, right? So we see that from them. So you can see out of the most likely 12, it says 12 originated from them, right? 12 originated and from the E1B1, just for the sake of clarity for that. I'm gonna close that. So we get 12 from M2. So if we go up and look at it, right, one more time for the clarity, just to bring it home, right? It's not E1, but it's E1B1, P2. And that brings forth Isaac, which is E1B1. And that brings forth M2, which are all verified ancient DNA that no one has today. All these are confirmed ancient DNA that no one has today. E1B1A, M2 is where the 12 breaks off from. right? That's why I showed you that picture from right here from the right family tree DNA. Remember how they said what they said, right? They'll try to connect you to M2, not any other one. They're not going to connect you to a past one, but M2, right? Just that final verification right there. See, thank you. Zoom in a little bit. I don't know why I can't do that or zoom down. That's why I like to use the phone. Zoom out and then just look at it like this. All right. Let me just go up a little bit so I go to the middle. Okay. Thank you for contacting Family Tree DNA. We won't predict you to E1B1A exactly, which is also known as EV38. However, we will predict you to EM2, which is one of the major subclades of the haplotype group to being predicted to it would mean you belong to E1B1A, which is previous of it. So remember, M2 breaks into 12 branches. That's what M2 does. M2 is going to be your obviously your Jacob, Israel. That's going to be your line that you want to have. So for the clarity, this is actually going to be the correct lineup. One more time on this one right here. Here's your correct lineup. It's going to be E1B1 P2, and then it's going to be E1B1 V38, and then it's going to be your E1B1 M2. And that's where you're going to get your 12 from, right? And that's the only way that it works out. You even get your sons of Ishmael. You get your, from E1B1, you get your Ishmaelites, sons of Abraham, directly from there. That matches with history. Everything right here matches with history. And this makes the way to the truth of what actually is going on. So that's actually the truth of how this actually lines up. So this idea previous, this is wrong. This is false. So I guess that's the best way to answer that, beloved family. Yeah, be careful. J is a mix. Remember, they are not mostly J is because J is a mix. For the sake of understanding, for clarity, I don't want to. Do I have to show a? Let's go over. Let's have a geneticist give the answer. You may have missed a little video I did previously with the brother here, but let me show you real fast, just for the sake of understanding, as I do this for the sake of truth and love of Israel, for the sake of understanding, as I don't do this to shame you at all. I do this so that you can have clarity of truth for the sake of understanding. I have to stress that point, that I want you to understand that I'm giving this to you because all I care about is truth. I don't want money. I don't want my name. I don't want none of that. I want you to understand that truth has indeed manifest in this generation, right? Has indeed manifest. But let me show you. Here, I'll show you a geneticist that gives you the information of who is J, right? Who is J? We can also see that he also will slowly and surely start to say who is E. But I'll show you who is J. I'll show you right here first. And this part is going to be at 31 and 49.
Out in the Middle East, they have a dot.
I showed this before, but I'll show you again. I'm going to show you real fast.
So who are the Jews? Who are modern day Jewish people? Well, it seems that a section, I should say, a subsection of modern Jews, along with many other Middle Eastern peoples, and some Europeans, like Greeks and other Balkan Peninsula folks, and Italians, and even some Spaniards at a low percentage, and even some Indians, all share a common Turkish heritage.
Okay, so now you just see that he said the Jews are Turk. Why? Because the J chromosome is the one that he was testing here. Now let me show you right here, 37 and 40. Let me show you this one now. (37 and 40).
geography of the Ottoman Empire overlaps very well here. And the timing of various splits, there's multiple lines of evidence that I think point towards a Turkish origin for much of the modern peoples in these places. Let's zoom out a little bit so we can see Africa and Turkish origin for much of the at these. Keep reminding myself of, I think Turkish people, I think modern day geographic Turkey, know their origins are in Central Asia. They reconquer, push out some of these Mongols, and their empire stretches into the Middle East. And we said last time, this seems to be the most likely explanation for the distribution of this group J lineages. It's found at these levels, in these places, heavily in the Arabian Peninsula. The geography of the Ottoman Empire overlaps very well here. And the timing of various splits, there's multiple lines of evidence that I think point towards a Turkish origin for much of the modern peoples in these places.
So you heard how he said that the modern people in those places actually are going to have the Y chromosome of J. This is a geneticist. This person right here is actually a geneticist. One more, let's look at this one. Let's look at this one now for the sake of understanding. Let's actually look at 2718. Let's go to 2718 right here. Let's see what he says here.
As you march downward to the modern era through the tree. In 1800 BC, the major European lineage, I should say the major, what I've called the indigenous European lineage, group I, and the major Turkish lineage, group J, BC, the major European lineage, I should say the major, what I've called the indigenous European lineage, group I, and the major Turkish lineage, group J, are one. They have not separated. If you look at the family tree, what would become what I'm calling indigenous Europe, and what would become the Turkish people that would be up here in Central Asia, then come marching back through the Middle East in the late era, in the AD time period. On the Y chromosome family tree, they are joined.
So if that, I want you to understand, for that is for clarity. All that I gave you was for clarification of truth. Understand the J lineage is the Turks. That's not going to be the Arabs. That's not the Arabs. The Turk lineage merged with the Arabs, which is E1B1B, which we see that evident in the genetic information, which that's what I just showed you on that scroll down. If either they're going to have a high J and a low E, or they're going to have a high E and a low J. That's what we're going to see, because they've been there for 14,000 years, or 1,400 years for the sake of understanding. 1,400 years, 1,400 years were they in that land. It's very important to understand, maybe even earlier for the sake of understanding. But they were actually merging together and converted to Islam, the same way the Jewish Ashkenazi people converted to Judaism, right? They converted to Islam as the other ones converted to Judaism. You notice a lot of people converting, right? You got a false image of the original Egyptians. That was a whitewashing that was going on. That's what actually happened, to be honest with you. That's the only way to put it. There was actually a whitewashing going on, even with the Ishmaelites. There was a whitewashing with the Ishmaelites. There was a whitewashing with Israel. That both happened. How ironic is this thing, for the sake of understanding? But yet this had happened. This thing had happened because of these conquests that had happened over here. And only is this information coming to life. So this is the only way. This is the only way. From Abraham gets the Ishmaelites. From Abraham gets the Ishmaelites. And then you get Isaac and Jacob. And then comes the 12 sons. So just for clarification, that's how we know that that's true. That's how we know it's true, for the sake of understanding. I hope that answered that, for the sake of understanding, as I hope to bring a lot of clarity. So yeah, a lot of the Hebrew camp chart is wrong, and some of their genetic information is wrong as well. So some of it is definitely information. It was part of. It's possible. It's possible that some of those. It's possible that the E1A could have been taken in the slave trade. It's possible to have some of those taken there. It's definitely possible, because remember, Africa is a mingled. It was mixed a little bit. Not that mix, but definitely a little mix. I just wanted to see how everyone's doing. on that. If let me see, if I think if I don't know if you still want that answer. If E went to Africa, yep, that's right. Exactly. And we find E in the Middle East. We find it in the Middle East. We can't deny it. E1, B1 is ancient DNA that we find in the Middle East, and they know it. They know it for a fact. They find it in the areas where Abraham lived. Abraham lived in those areas, even up to the Euphrates. Remember, he went to some of the areas up there. We have those evidence, and we know those things had happened. Yeah. What website? I want to know what this one is for. Which website I was using. We got caught in the slave trade. So yep, some of A and B got in the slave trade. Not much, because they wanted a certain stock of people. They wanted the people that was intelligent enough to do some of the works they did, like build the White House, stuff like that. All types of things like that. They wanted quality workers for certain works, certain things that they wanted. But that's one of those things that's important when it comes to that type of matter. And if you know, through the what they call the Arabic slave trade, few people know this, but a lot of the A and B, the males were killed. A lot of the males were killed. If you know about the Islamic slave trade, a lot of the males in the Islamic slave trade was killed, and a lot of the females was taken and became concubines. A lot of them, and that's some history right there, just for the sake of understanding that those males were actually, a lot of them were A and B. So that actually wiped out a lot of Cain's line. The Islamic conquest actually knocked out a lot of the Cain's line throughout the Islamic conquest. And some of that's in the history, because that's what Africa means: divide, conquer, and splendor, pretty much. The homeland, Africa, Arabia, that's going to be their homeland when they actually changed the name Libya to what they wanted to change it to. So obviously, for the sake of understanding, this is for you. This should be in the description. Otherwise, y'all willing, on Lion Farm, 3 p.m. Central Time, I'm going to go live on this again, and I'll go over it a little more thorough for the sake of understanding, and go over some longer videos for the sake of understanding. But this was more to give the understanding that this is right. This is 100% right. Remember, all these are ancient. No, you're not going to find anyone with M2 today. You're going to find people breaking off from M2, a branch of M2. You're not going to find no one with this, and no one with this today. You're going to see someone of the descendants of them. And remember, M35 is going to be actually the line of Esau. That's actually the descendants of Esau, the actual bloodline of Esau, for the sake of understanding. But remember, Esau, a few people understand this, but in the scriptures, Esau is described as being Rome. A lot of things are symbolic in some parts, like Psalms 137. If someone reads Psalms 137 and says that's not symbolic, then they don't know what symbolic is. Psalms 137 is very symbolic. It's very symbolic in there. It'll actually compare Esau with Babylon and all those things like that. It's a very symbolic scripture that talks about the wrath that's going to be brought to Rome. That's why Rome was preserved twice. Remember, iron, and then iron and clay, because it's going to be preserved twice to get double portion of punishment. Very important to understand with some of those things. So sometimes Esau is used in a sense of in that way. So these are going to be the Ishmaelites, E1, B1B, and then P2 is Abraham, E1BA, E1BA, and then that brings forth E1B1A, which is V38, and then it brings forth M2, E1B1A1, for the sake of understanding. That's going to bring your Jacob and as it says, he has 12 sons and 4 main groups, meaning 4 mothers that actually played a part in bringing them forth. So hermetic it is, so hermetic. So I hope this went well for you, as I believe that this went very well, as I hope to bring more information, brothers and sisters, as we go over these things. In fact, I'm doing a study on the pirates of what is called the New Indies, right? Maybe I'll bring that out, because I know that there's whitewashing going on. A lot of whitewashing on a certain individual that people may not know, that has a lot of historical evidences of a certain individual. This person, you see this picture right here. If you look on YouTube, right, you'll see this thing right here. If you ever see something like that, you'll see these Jewish pirates. I think these are cartoon history. I call this cartoon history. I call it people who hear history, make and draw it out, so that people who see the history think that this is how it actually looked and how it actually was. I call this cartoon history. They get a little bit of summary of history and they draw it out to make their little people to watch it and be like, oh, that's so cool. The great history. No historical quotes. Not most of it is going to be just something from a secondhand account. That's actually not what they look like. We can actually have a lot of evidences of what they actually look like because they have so much evidence of different dark-skinned pirates, but a lot of pirates that were actually of Ishmaelite descent. But the certain pirate here was a Jew. And this pirate, it actually a lot of history when it comes to him. I'm not going to go over it now, but this is a lot of history on this little thing right here. The Sephardic Moorish real pirates of the Caribbean. The real pirates of the Caribbean. You can get some real historical facts of the early Jewish communities in the 13 colonies. You can actually get the first writings. It's a real writing. Early papers, early writings about Jews in America, early Jews in America and what they look like. And obviously, for the sake of understanding, he knows that it's going to illustrate them as a certain shade of color. Very interesting video here. This individual, if you never heard of him, very interesting page on some things. He needs some discernment on some things. So obviously go about it with a grain of salt. He just brings out some sources, as you can see how old some of these sources are. But I'm doing something on that right now, as that's all I do. I don't do nothing else. I don't play no games. I don't play any games at all. All I do is dig. That's it. Study, dig. I've been digging for a long time. I'm 30 now. I've been digging for a long time before I start coming out and bringing this stuff forth. As I think digging is very important for an individual to do, then bring it forth. As I paid attention to the brother here, when he said he was digging and studying for 5 years, and then he started bringing out work. Then he started evangelizing. That's how you do it. You study, dig, and then bring it out. Let's see, only North Africans. I think we touched on that. Yep. Amen. A little more on E1. Yep. Amen. Next time we'll go a little more on E1. Hey, we'll go into a little more on that. I'll definitely do some information study on that. But from what I've seen, it's not enough. It's not a big what's the word I'm looking for? They're not historically important when it comes to a large portion of what happened with Israel, for the sake of understanding. Like we can look it up. I'm gonna just show you an example right here. Right, we can go and look a little bit into it, right? E1A, and what we got to do is match them with the history, and you can see where they are, different areas like this, whatnot, obviously in Africa and different things like that. And we can pull up different individuals who would be the more closer ones and whatnot, and then do a information study on their name, on what's the history of them, and all these things. And I can tell you this, that a lot of them, right here it says, in particular, the Dogon people, which are these people right here, which try to connect them with Ishmael is going to be extremely hard. Of Mali have been found to carry this one as high as 45%. So they got a high percentage at 45%. And we can do looking at them and whatnot. I would not say that these were Ishmaelites. Even just getting an idea just of seeing them. I heard of these before. In fact, I looked up a little bit on them. These are a group that likes to wear masks and stuff. In fact, I think it's right here. They're mask dens, wooden structures and whatnot. Yep, is that group. It's like a group that's in Mali. You can see here, for the sake of understanding. I would not try to go that route. I want to try to go that route to try to make this line Muslim, because you're going to have so many walls, for sake of understanding. In fact, I believe that this is a group that migrated because of, let me see. I just want to find something here. Something with Islam, something that happened with them in Islam. I believe they migrated and moved because of Islam was coming around. Let's see. It says, let's talk about Islam right there. But these ones, I remember them moving from Islam. They was basically going through it or something like that. It says it is often difficult to distinguish between pre-Muslim practice and later practices, but Islamic law classified the Dogon and many other ethnicities of the region, Maasi, Gombo, Bumbo, all these as being the non-canon Darhub. I don't know how you say that. And let me actually could like, let's see. Islamic law, the major division of Dar al-Islam. Some people probably know what that is for the sake of understanding. It just talks about Muslim government, Darhub, devoted non-Muslim land ruled upon acceptance. Obviously, you have to go a little bit into this and then pull up a little more onto it. Obviously, I'm not going to just take this definition and run with it. I would rather look it up on the actual, look up actual definitions of the Ode for the sake of understanding. But it looks like they wasn't part of Islam. They actually, if I remember, they were running from them. Other oral histories place the origin of the Dogon to the west beyond the river Niger. To tell of the Dogon coming from the east, it is likely the Dogon of today are descendants of several groups of diverse origin who migrated to escape Islamization. There it is. It talks about how they escaped Islamization. These weren't the ones spreading Islam. They were running from Islam. These were some of the group that was trying to escape Islam, not trying to spread it. But you can see actually Islam actually began from the original Arabs. And then the Turks took in Islam. It's important to understand that Islam, the original Arabs were the ones spreading Islam, but these ones were not. Oh, they were actually, and apparently the Arabs considered them fair game. They feared them fair game for raids and stuff. So basically A1 is just a people that's a different people that's not considered the original Arabs for the sake of understanding. Because I remember them not actually being part of the things. They were actually part of the people who was killing them. These jihadic expeditions formed themselves to force the Dogon to abandon their traditional religious beliefs for Islam. So they were actually being converted. And there was a people that was actually outside of the originators of Islam, which were actually the original Arabs. So this is actually a different group. So this just shows you the genetics that they're not part of the 12 tribes of Ishmael. So this is actually important to understand that this group right here is just evident itself that E1A was more of a group of other Shemites, being from the family, probably more closely related to Abraham, but not of Abraham. That's very important. They're not of Abraham, but they are closely related to him. Because remember, even moving it back, you'll make it even more worse, right? Even if we move it back, like for example, let me actually just make sure we stress this for the sake of understanding. If we try to move them back here, we're moving them further from here. We're moving them back two. These are two spaces. You see what's going on there? This is one space. This is another space. If we move Abraham to E1, we move them back two spaces. You see what's going on there? Not one space, but two. You see what's going on there? Because this one's going to bring forth this, and then it's going to bring forth this, for the sake of understanding. Or else we got to go and not just make Abraham this, which will make him a brother to this, but we have to make him this. That would bring us back two spaces and not get us to Jacob. Because remember, it said, remember what I showed you how family tree will trace us to M2, right? That's important to understand because these are ancient. All these are ancient up to here. And then this is who we are of the 12, right? That's important to understand. So Abraham is not here. That would not work out. So that these are, just for clarity, these are someone who from Abraham must be a different branch from Shem. I can't tell you exactly who, but they're a branch from Shem. Because remember, it could be Moab and Ammon, right? Because it could easily be that, easily, without doubt. But though I think D might be more Ammon and Moab. But for the sake of clarity, obviously these ones would be from the line of Shem, somewhere before Abraham's time, someone breaking off a branch and then being of the line of Shem. Because remember, Shem there's other people who are Shemites. Not just, when we say Shemite, we're not just saying Abrahamic. We're actually saying people of the line of Shem, and that's different branches, multiple different branches. When you look at a family tree of the line of Shem, is large. It's large, a lot of different branches from Shem. So there's other peoples that could be from Shem, without a doubt, no doubt. So obviously, when stuff was going on in the land, they probably was moving downward, most likely moved downward. And they also settled in Africa, as Africa looks like a nice land. It looks like a nice land. I wouldn't mind just living in Africa. You can see there's a place that a lot of people live, right? But obviously, Abraham starts here because moving it back to does no one a favor. It actually confuses the matter on many levels that many geneticists will know would be laughable. So that's why Abraham is not here, but here. Abraham's line is actually starts here, and then he has him, and then he has him. And then that's when the 12 it comes. And just for the clarity on that. But these ones are people who were actually persecuted by E1B1B. Those are people that were persecuted by E1B1B and actually written down as fair game to hunt. They were written down as fair game to actually hunt after. So just for clarity, I guess a little history, fast history right there, as I know a little bit of it. So I guess that helped bring a little bit forth right there. So I guess that's a little clarity with there. So with that, family, I hope that this note is going to be in the description. And what I just showed you is this is airtight. This is airtight. You see that this is airtight? This is an airtight study that you're seeing here. And there's no other way about it. And the geneticists know it. And it brings forth 12 tribes, right? That brings forth 12 tribes from this line. Yes, you can say that. You can say from Jacob brings forth 12 original tribes. You can say that without a doubt, that this brings forth 12 original tribes. And you can also say that they come from 4 groups, which is involved with the X chromosome, right? The change of these SNPs. These are called SNPs. SNPs is basically the change of pretty much what you see right here. These different things, there are different SNPs, different lines as they keep on going and going and going and changing. SNPs are more older. They're more stable. They're not like STRs. STRs are more recent. They go up to 500 years in the past. STRs are just 500 years in the past. SNPs are of ancient. SNPs tell you things of ancient time that gives you a little more understanding on that. But right here, as you see, it's going to have a note with a lot of meat in it, a lot of meat. So I just want to show you that it's airtight. This thing is airtight for the sake of understanding. As I'm also in the medical field, this may not be my field of expertise, but I'm used to this type of information, this type of studying. It is not something that I am foreign to. This is something that I am very familiar with, this type of information, this type of studying. It's not something I'm foreign to. That's why I wanted to bring this out, as I felt like I needed to contribute to the Israeli cause, to the people and who they are. So that's what this is me bringing something that is airtight and is verified with, as you see, family tree DNA, that this is what you actually see here, as well as the other sources showing you that indeed Israel has 12 that comes from him, right? 12 that actually comes from the line of Jacob, which I wanted to have the 12. I've been looking for those, which ones are the 12. I would love to find which subgroups are the 12 for the sake of understanding, but I haven't found them. They haven't told anyone yet who they are, or I haven't found that exact quote where they tell you which ones they are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I don't know if this is it. It could be. Who knows? I don't know which one's the exact 12. But I just wanted to show you. This because I think it's important for you to see this, that the evidence of this is undeniable. That's why I wanted to show you that the evidence of this is without a doubt undeniable. You can hold this, you can bring this out, and you'll feel so comfortable because it's gonna give the solid understanding to everything in history, right? These 2 different branches. You got your Ishmaelites, your 12 tribes of the Ishmaelites, and you got your 12 of Israel, right? You're gonna have your sons of Ishmael, right? And you're gonna have your tribes of Israel, for the sake of understanding. So I just wanted to show you that, as this thing is solid, is a solid understanding, and it's unchangeable for the sake of understanding. It's not going to change anytime in the future. Your DNA, your Y chromosome froze 2,000 years ago, and this also is frozen in time, as this is a piece of evidence of who peoples are, for the sake of understanding. That's what this is. This is a piece of evidence of who we are. So one more time for the clarity, this is actually what we're going to see when we look at the Y chromosome of Israel. This is going to be the correct order. There is no other order than this order. P2, E1, B1 is Abraham. V38, E1, B1A is going to be Isaac. Right? You can see how these break off like that. they notice, geneticists notice the ones at the top like this, the ones at the top are going to be the line of what you see right here in between these. These ones at the top are actually going to be like right here. This one right here, P2. Actually, this one is E1B1A. This is actually for P2 when it's like that at the top. And this one branches out at the top. This is actually E1B1, being B1A. This is E1B1A, which is actually V38 right there. It just branches at the top like that just to show what it actually is. And then you see right here, this one actually branches at the top. This one actually is, this is actually Jacob. No one is this. You'll never see no one with this line. This is actually where it branches off to the 12 right here. This is actually going to be the branches off to the 12 right there. So M2 is Jacob. M2 is Jacob, right? He's going to be E1B1A1. That's going to be Jacob for the sake of understanding. That's going to be Jacob for the sake of understanding. And these are going to be everyone else. These are going to be the 12. And remember how it told us it's 12. That's going to be us. So for clarity, that's going to be the understanding of the information that's provided today. Ground tight and ground breaking. That's what it is. So, amen says there from someone that's not this, but grandson, but that's as well. So Somalis are admitting that they are Esau. It depends. If you got to look at the Somalis information, and obviously looking at the Somalis DNA, they're actually going to be E1B1A. In fact, 100%. They're 100% E1B1A. I mean E1B1B. My bad. 100% E1B1B is the Somalis. The Somalis, you can look at their DNA, is 100% E1B1B. So obviously, looking at that, you can't take everyone saying, if someone says they're Esau, you know, they can say one thing, genetics and history says another. So from all the evidences, E1B1B was also the powerhouse of the movement of the Islamic powers. That's a historical fact, that the E1B1B was a powerhouse in the movement of the Islamic powers. That's just who we see moving around with the Islamic conquests. It was E1B1B that was going on there. And that would be your Islamic groups, for the sake of understanding. Ishmael. It's going to be Ishmael. And again, like I said, even in this sense, right, it's going to branch off from Abraham. You can't, that's not going to make Ishmael, right? Just that's why I showed you that for that clarity. I just want to show you that for that clarity. Again, you can see from P2 comes Ishmael, right? From P2. If we have to have that order, and that order is set right like there, right? From P2 come Ishmael, right? We already verified that he's not E1, therefore this can't be any other way. There's no other way. Israel, we gotta come together and start practicing and chanting this fine, because this is the truth. This is what you're seeing here. If we bring this out, geneticists will agree. They will all agree. They can't deny it. There's no debate about it. It's not like history where you can say, oh, this thing or that thing. Genetics is solid, and is unchangeable. If you chant this and you bring this to them, they cannot combat it. They cannot combat it, because these are Ishmaelites. These are going to be the Ishmaelites, as without a doubt, from Abraham. And then comes Isaac. See Isaac right there. And then you're going to have Jacob, right? You're going to have Jacob right there. Then you're going to have your 12. And remember, it's confirmed in their cells tell you there's 12 original lines. There's 12 origin lines. They say this themselves, 12 origin lines that come from them, right? And it's going to be 4 major lines that's going to be there, right? 1, 2, 3, 4 branches right there, 4 major lines that's going to represent 4 mothers that actually had their part in helping make Israel, for the sake of understanding. That's very important. As the Y chromosome at its tips does a recombination with the X chromosome. So this is the only way. This is the only way it's possible. Remember, I showed you how family tree DNA said this is the last one. M2 is the last one, not this one. This is the last one, M2. That's very important. So that means these 3, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's important to understand. And then you're going to have your 12, right? Very important. Then you see with Ishmael, he's going to have his 12, right? He's going to have his 12. Very important, right? So that's what we see. Very important. So again, this is the only way. What you're seeing here is the first time that this has been brought forth. This is direct, pure source. This is the truth. What you're seeing here, this is a medical fact. What you're seeing here is a medical fact. You've seen historic information. You've seen the people in Portugal. You've seen the people DNA tests in Portugal. You've seen the people that was found in Portugal. You've seen that their hands was tied behind their back and it was all children. Like it says, the Jewish children that was taken from Portugal, those were all children. Everyone that was found was usually under 18 years old. I showed you all those things, and this is the verification of the truth, that the line of Israel is in fact E1B1, for the sake of understanding, starting there and going on. So with that, with that, family, I hope that that was everything, answered everything right there, for the sake of understanding, as that is it. That's all that I have to present. So I hope that that was a very well studied for you all. So, brother, if we can wrap this up, I'd like to tomorrow, 3 p.m. Central Time, if you're willing, on Lion Farm, as well as this page. I'm always going to try to jump in at different times, as I think there's a lot of facts that come from this page, and I think it's important. I think it's really growing. I think it's bringing out a lot of facts and a lot of information, and I like to see that in the community, as well as on our page. Obviously, on my page, I'm a small drop of water, but I bring out a very extensive piece of information, as I think it's not about the quantity, it's about the quality of all things. So that's why I put in work as if I'm speaking to millions of people, for the sake of understanding. So obviously, Arabia, the history behind it, the name behind it, I got a video on that E1B1, for the sake of understanding, on that name. So I'm gonna close that. Oh, that's not closing it. I'll close that. So with that, family, I hope that you are blessed, and I hope you are beloved, and amen. Let me contact. Let's see what's up with the brother here. All right. Answers Genesis 49ers. Are you I hope you fell asleep on me. Let me actually send him a message real fast. Or I'm gonna call him. Maybe he just fell asleep. Call as a little alarm. All right, I tried to call him to see if he hello? Let's see. All right, I tried to call him, but I guess I'm not gonna leave it with empty air. So I guess I can.
I'm here, brother. I'm here.
Oh, there you are. My bad. Okay, so there you are. So I pretty much finished everything on this channel where you see Lion Farm. You can put, like, if you can't find Lion Farm, type Lion Farm 23, or Lion Farm, or any type of thing. And if you see this thing, what you see on the screen right here, this Lion Farm, that's where we are. We're gonna be doing studying and different things like that while watching the brother. So with that, family, that's everything I got for now. I hope that was good. I hope that was good for you, because that is pretty much everything genetically. It's everything genetically and historically. And the link will be in the description for that e-note, that Evernote, and you can have that for free. And that's all I got for now.
All right. Shalom, shalom, shalom. Y'all stay tuned. We will be back Saturday with another presentation, and the source will be back to enlighten y'all. We appreciate Lion Forum coming on the platform and bringing forth this great information. Yeah, be on the lookout. We'll be here to feed y'all the spiritual bread. And we out.